it's the second time we talk about aspects. There is so much we couldn't touch on and cover last time. So let's see where this is going to take us today. I wanted to suggest, if you guys want, to make like a short run through the cycle of aspects from the conjunction to the opposition, imagining that we're working with Mars and Venus, as Jean-Marc suggested last time, and try to go through them one by one. I think there's 6 or 7 aspects, and talk about it, imagine different things, imagine how this aspect between these two planets could play out. And this can be a model for all other planets in a pair that can make that aspect. Using the 12-step cycle proposed by Roger, but not just him, and see, we probably won't need to go through every single aspect, but I thought these two planets would be very interesting together to look at the dynamic of how they can interact in the birth chart and what we can expect if we have them in these aspects. So I've got this, sharing the screen now with you. I've got this thing from last time. Could you all see it well? Yeah? All right. So this second wheel, let me just try to make sure I see you all on the screen. Okay, so that second wheel here is starting from the conjunction, and we can see the 10 degrees increments between, as we go through the 360-degree circle. I suggest we look at Mars conjunct Venus to start with. Then we move on to the semi-sextile with 30 degrees here between them. Then we can see the sextile, 60, the first square, the trine, and the quincunx, and obviously the opposition as well. Yeah? Would you like to do that? Yeah? All right. So starting from the conjunction. Anyone wants to comment on how this can play out? Mars conjunct Venus in the chart. Anyone has that in their chart among you? Please unmute yourself if you want to. Yeah, we ran through this a little bit last time, but now I was hoping we can try to make it come alive with some examples. And, if you have observed things going on with people that have any of these aspects, and we want to kind of see how the theory comes into practice, whether we can really see that reflected in how people live out their charts. And also those of you that are astrologers, you can share if you want how people have come through, living through these aspects with Mars and Venus as well. What about the conjunction? Jean-Marc, I can't hear you. I think you're muted for some reason. Unmute now.
Thank you. Yeah, because I couldn't unmute myself in this format. I try to find, but
if you have any problems unmuting yourself, just give me a sign and I'm going to do it from my side.
Okay, so Venus Mars in conjunction. I very often ask the question, are you a dancer? And very, very often the people whether loved dancing or actually had followed courses or even could be professionals. And it worked very well because Mars brings the strong energy, physical energy, and Venus the grace and the art, and the two together really works as one thing with dance. So I see dance as a
connection there.
Yeah, and it can be a symbol for me. It becomes a symbol of the conjunction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe I should say a few words just to introduce this whole thing before we start with the actual aspects. We can pick any two planets, and the reason I thought your idea about Mars and Venus is great is because if we can think about a relationship between something and something else, two people, or everybody on an individual level with something out there in the world, these two planets seem to represent relationship as such, and both of them they're very connected. They're probably the most immediate relationship planets in the birth chart. They're personal planets. We all have them in our charts. We know that we need to somehow try to make them work together for the smooth running of our lives and for the smooth running of our relationships on every level, not just intimate relationships, work as well, whatever you can think of. So Mars and Venus, I think, are great as imagining them as maybe two different people living inside us, two different functions living inside us that always have to be made to work together, even if they don't make an aspect. Well, they always make an aspect of some sort. They're always positioned in the chart in some sort of angular relationship to each other. But it's not always one of those main ones that we astrologers normally look at and try to analyze. So let's suppose we have them in a very prominent relationship, one of those aspects, then they would be very activated in our chart. They're usually the forces of life, as far as I understand them, that stand behind our Venus, our value system, our desires, our goals, our conceptual reality of what we want to have for ourselves, what we want to attract from the outside world in. So it's a process of magnetism. We try to magnetize things so that we attract them to us, to make them our own, or to use them for our own, either satisfaction or development or whatever. So Venus is, we had a whole lecture on Venus and we had a whole lecture on Mars, but not a lecture, a talk on these two. So you can go deeper into it if you want. But this is the constant interrelationship between the two. We cannot separate them. Venus decides what we want, and then Mars goes out and actually takes it, actually wins it, works for it. So they cannot exist separately. And in every chart, we have them together. So what I'm trying to suggest we do with this exercise is imagine how this relationship between Mars and Venus, which is always there anyway, can be very dynamic and very different if it happens to be in one of those 12 steps or one of those first initial steps of the cycle. And how this can make a difference for the life of the person that has the aspects in the chart. So I will start with a conjunction. In that way, then you can add things and contradict me, whatever you want to do. But this is our starting point moment. They meet, they merge together. You know, that's what usually happens in the meeting and the conjunction of two planets on the sky. So if we imagine we have a Mars-Venus conjunction in any sign, I mean, we don't want to include signs of the zodiac here because it's going to get very detailed and very complicated. We don't have the time to go through this cookbook thing. But any sort of conjunction of Mars and Venus in the birth chart would result in this initial impulse of what Roger says subjective being. You know, under a conjunction, we have the subjective initial impulse of something wanting to appear, something wanting to get born and to start exploring the world and its possibilities. So how have you observed, I'm curious, do you know a lot of people that have Mars-Venus conjunction in their charts? And how is this drive and passion and desire and then the ability to express it out show itself with the conjunction?
Can I just say that was interesting what Jean-Marc was saying about dancing, because I have Venus and Mars in parallel, which is similar to a conjunction, and they're sort of 12 degrees apart, I suppose, in the same sign, not a conjunction, but in parallel anyway. And I absolutely love dancing. I'm not a professional dancer, but for me, it just, I get such a, I go into a bliss like state straight away almost. I just absolutely love dancing, the music and stuff. It's more, I think it's more of a Kundalini thing though. And that could be the Mars energy, and I just let it rise, and I'm totally blissed out. So that is just interesting, because I didn't know that about Venus and Mars in conjunction. Yeah, so I don't know if a parallel counts.
I have heard that parallel is something similar to a conjunction. Even though
they're both out of bounds as well.
Both out of bounds. It's very interesting.
So yeah, I don't know if that makes a difference. But
it should make a big difference.
Totally,
yeah. I remember yours were in Capricorn, weren't they, Paul?
Yeah, in the tropical system, yeah. Yes. You know, I'm into the 13 signs now, so we won't go there.
Are they falling now in different signs in the new system or not?
But yeah, well, they're both in Sag in the 13 sign system. So I'm still exploring all of this anyway. So I'm not going to comment on that now. But I just thought I'd mention that about the conjunction, because that is interesting.
So it's still a conjunction.
No. They're the same. They're the same degrees apart.
All right. Yes.
I just thought I'd mention about the parallel as well.
Yeah, parallel is, if for those of you that don't know, I'm not 100% sure. Correct me if that's wrong. But when by declination, the two planets are in the same, it is more or less the same degree. Yeah. So that's we usually follow the declination when we look at whether we've got anything in the chart going over the number 23, and that makes it an out of bounds planet, if that's by declination more than 23. I mean, this is too technical, but I've read recently somewhere that planets that are in parallel have been observed to join together very similarly to a conjunction, even though that's not the same thing. It's like a completely different thing. But obviously, like when two energies align in a way, one way or another, in longitude or in latitude, regardless, I guess when they align, they give each other something from whatever they stand for as energies independently, and they merge their functions in a way. They affect each other, almost like two people meeting, and now they are different from this point onwards because they cannot escape the relationship. The conjunction in astrology is the most unescapable relationship between two planets because they're so close together, they're so much together that they cannot be affected by something else, like a third factor, independently. They always need to kind of comply with the fact that they are walking hand in hand with that other planet. So I think in the conjunction, there's just such an enormous influx of energy between Mars and Venus, such an enormous drive to express yourself, to act out. The desires are strong, and the impulse for action, the drive, is also quite strong, and they kind of feed each other together. So most of the time, what I've seen with the conjunction is that people are very driven. People are very anxious to act and to move. It's almost like an Aries energy, like in the conjunction, where you know how Aries is so anxious to just move forward and make the next step and the next step, even without knowing where exactly it's going. And I've seen something similar as restlessness with the conjunction. And maybe dancing is one way to exhaust the energy, so it doesn't become a problem, isn't it? So it is kind of naturally used. What do you think?
Yeah.
What sort of dancing do you do, Paula?
Oh, just freelance, and it's more about just letting energy flow for me, you know, and just letting energy rise or whatever, you know, and just going into a different state, really, you know, getting out of this world for a little while in my own head, but through my body, you know, just enjoying my body in a different way, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know this is arguable because of the orbs, you know, what orbs people use for different aspects. But I personally feel, from having seen your chart before, even though it's 12, you said 12 degrees apart, these two, Mars and Venus, that they are actually, I feel they're in a conjunction. Also because of the parallel, also because of the, you know, both being out of bounds, in the same sign, in the same house. I'm not going to, I mean, if you want, I can show the chart as an example, but just wanted to say that, have you ever felt from experience, let's suppose you have a conjunction, have you ever felt very anxious that your desires and your impulses cannot be satisfied straight away, like quickly, to have what you want quickly, this impatience about it?
Yeah, definitely impatience. Yeah, I've had to control that. It's still hard for me to control, I think. I do get quite impatient, but
yes,
I admit to that.
And do you guys think that people that are born with Mars Venus conjunction have some sort of a charisma about them, some sort of a personality that you can see, you can feel it? Yes.
Yes, I will agree. I have Mars and Venus in conjunction.
Okay. In which sign, Justina?
In Virgo.
In Virgo. All right.
And the passion I have, it's the books. I'm not necessarily reading them, but I'm buying them. So,
Are you collecting them?
Kind of.
So there is something compulsive about the conjunction of Mars and not just Mars and Venus, but in general. When you have that influence, and in Virgo, this tendency of Virgo to collect. I don't have Virgo, but I've got a lot of sixth house, and there is something similar going on, of wanting to collect things and to order things and to somehow, I don't know, build a system of a statistic or whatever, categorize. I don't know.
Yes, I agree.
And what else? How else do you feel your conjunction? Are you, I don't know, do you feel restless? Do you feel like more extroverted? Does it make you more extroverted, or because of the sign, maybe not?
No, it's in company system is in 12th house, so it's not.
It's in the 12th house.
Yes, in company system.
Right. So it's a bit hidden.
Yes, and I wish very modestly, and I go for my needs very in modest way. So.
Okay. Well, I mean that's roughly what I've heard. That there is, I mean, maybe depends really on the house and the sign as well, in which the conjunction is, but it's got this tendency of something needs to be expressed. It cannot remain behind the scenes. Maybe it can, but then it would accumulate as a frustration. It's very easy, I've heard, to become very frustrated if you have a Mars-Venus conjunction and you haven't found a good channel to work with that, like dancing, for example, or it could be something else as well. But that's because that's the conjunction, and it's like step one and a new beginning energy. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what to do with. There is still no form purpose in the conjunction. There is just an impulse to be and to live and to do things out there, like an explorer energy. Any other ideas, observations about it?
I have a question actually, because there is something that's not clear for me about the conjunction of the Sun and Moon conjunction, because it's supposed to be the prototype of all relationship cycles between planets. And when the Sun and the Moon are conjunct, the Moon is invisible, and it's a moment where the Moon disappears. Maybe is it the moment where the influence of the Moon is the lowest?
You see, I'm sure you know about the applying and separating conjunctions and how different they are. And I think we touched on this last time a little bit. So the moon is completely dark, and we don't see it on the new moon's phase, but which is like what we associate with the conjunction. But this new moon phase has the two sides of it. It's the balsamic end of the balsamic phase, the last phase, which is like end of the cycle. And then we've got the beginning of the next cycle. Presumably the new moon has already happened. So for the new moon to have already happened and to be talking about like a separating conjunction, that thing that we are, thinking about now with Mars and Venus, and also we can think of it in the same way with the sun and the moon, they need to have reached the same degree. So say, if you have your sun in the 14th degree of Aquarius, and you've got your moon coming to that 40th degree as well, the moment they have been in the same place, in the same zodiac degree, this is called the synodic cycle. And it's different from the sidereal cycle. So the synodic cycle is the cycle of meeting between two planets. I think the word synodic means meeting of two different things, at least two. There can be more than two, but they meet in the sky. There's always the Earth taking part in that as well, because in order for us to observe that meeting, we need to be here on Earth and to see it.
Yes, sure.
The start of the synodic cycle is the conjunction, the zodiacal conjunction, when they are in the same zodiac degree. Is that answering your question?
No, that's perfectly clear. But what I wonder is it seems to me that there is a lunar influence, that the moon is still powerful even when it's a new moon.
Is it not very powerful actually?
I'm wondering, because if you take the moon from the point of view of the cycle, the influence of the moon, and I am a Cancer rising, and I can very often feel the full moons. And so the full moon is a moment like when the moon, the strength of the moon is at its highest.
Yeah, the peak, the climax, as it says
the
here.
climax. So does this mean that the new moon or the new Venus in the Venus-Mars conjunction would mean that their energy, the energy of the planet is at its lowest? It would be logical, but I don't think it's the case.
That's such an interesting question. I love that question. I mean, I personally think that this is a mysterious moment. The moment of the new moon before and slightly before and slightly after is a very mysterious moment. As it says, so here they call it a conception moment. And we never know, if we think of human conception, we never know when that's happening, when really is the seed being planted. So this is the moment of seeds being planted. And I think this is a very powerful moment, as powerful as the full moon moment, but just it's different. It's almost like the introverted, for me personally, that's the introverted, same thing as the full moon. But if we think of the full moon as the climax is on display, we cannot avoid seeing it. We cannot avoid seeing the full moon, and something needs to be revealed there. While in the new moon, something needs to be hidden. It's the opposite principle, but I think on the both sides they are equally strong things, equally intense moments where something equally important is going on in the cycle. Yeah, even though we don't see it doesn't. Sometimes the deepest things, and here there are parallels with Pluto we can make. The mystery of what you experience when you go down deep and you hidden in the dark and in the depths. And we may feel like that's not important because we don't see it. But actually, sometimes the most powerful, the most important moment is when something is being prepared, planted, worked on, transformed, so that later on the first square here, it's actually, you see, it's interesting, isn't it? The birth is on the first square. It's not on the conjunction. Many people may think, but why? Why is it not at the conjunction when we have the birth of the thing? Actually, no, it's the whole first quarter between the conjunction and the first square. Something is preparing itself. It's kind of, to get to the moment when it's really being born. It's like a little bit like the conjunction being Capricorn. I read that there were two opinions about this cycle among astrologers. One of them want to think of the conjunction as Aries. Others want to think of it as Capricorn. So if you think of it as Capricorn, it's like this one here, that during Capricorn, in the middle of winter, when everything appears to be dead in nature, that everything appears to be, no vegetation, no plants, no life, actually something at that moment, in that mysterious moment under the snow, is when actually the cycle of nature starts itself anew. But we don't see really the result of that. We don't really see what's going on until we get to the middle of spring, to Aries, when we see the plants appearing and the life appearing really. But it was planted a few months before that. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. Yeah. And that first, planning stage, as I call it here, the planning stage, is this mystery moment from the conjunction to the first square. Yeah. Do you agree?
I know what you're saying there, because I always think of the winter solstice as a rebirth moment. So you're in this dark womb where you're still gestating and you're not born yet, but you will be born within like 3 days or something when the sun starts to become visible in the sky again. Mm-hmm. So like that's the same as a conjunction where one planet is separating from the other and is becoming separate slightly, but carries that energy with it. But you can't just because you can't see it when it's dead on doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, to me, I absolutely love the winter solstice. I love that silence and that feeling of being earthed and just everything's calm. A lot of people hate that, but I actually love it. They think it's like dark or like negative, but I don't see it that way at all. I find it quite comforting being in this sort of womb. Everything's just gone silent and still.
Well, you have a moon in Pisces, and this may have to do with it, with that feeling. But this is such an interesting moment, isn't it? The transition between the last step and the next first step is something similar. Is the transition between the 12th house and the first house, of how we need to let go of the difficulty, of emotional difficulty, mostly of whatever had happened before, accumulated up to the 12th house, so that we can start a new cycle in the first house. And here is something similar. I totally agree with you, Paul, on this, that it's a very vulnerable moment, the moment of the new moon. Now, have you been experimenting with making wishes on the new moon? Like they say, if you write down a short list of wishes for the next month at the moment of the new moon, which is the conjunction, then this is like a mysterious, hidden, vulnerable moment when I was like, the moon is giving itself to the sun, or whatever the faster planet is giving itself to the slower planet to get its influence in you. So something can get planted there, something can get born, and it's the best moment in the month to try to mix your energies of wish making and intention and desire and whatever with nature and with the universe, where it's going to be most adequate for that to be heard and for that to receive that initial impulse of conjunction. So then you can do something with it during the whole cycle. Yeah. And it's the moment of planting. So we can plant something, even as an intention. And that's powerful. Yeah.
My question is, I'm thinking of, in particular, a woman I knew well and who was a dancer with a Venus-Mars conjunction. I don't remember if it's a separating or applying conjunction, but she was actually dancing. It was not, she didn't look like spending her life at the beginning of a cycle. So I say that, how does this translate into personality trait if you are born under the...
I have seen it very different. Like people that are born with the conjunction but applying are so different from those with the separating. And I don't see such a big difference in any of the other aspects, personally. I don't know what you have observed, but people that have, when we talk about the sun and the moon, because that's the archetype, the lumination cycle, these two planets together, this is when we can judge the best, how this is actually appearing. I'm not sure about Venus and Mars, maybe also the same thing, but those that are at the end of the cycle on the new moon, which is applying, so the moon is applying. New moon means that the moon is still behind the sun, and it's trying to meet it. It's getting closer to meeting it again. It's getting closer to joining forces with it again. And it's close enough already to call it a conjunction, but they are finishing their cycle rather than beginning it. And these people are, my impression is that these people are almost like inhabiting a different world. A world of imagination, a world of outer reality. Sometimes they're very future-oriented. They look more to the future than interested in participating here and now, in what's going on now. It's very similar to Pisces, very similar to 12th house effect. Yeah? And you can see that. If somebody's moon and sun are this way, it really is a different personality from someone that has a new moon personality. The new moon personality, from my experience, is very naive, very subjective, very, projecting a lot of things out there in the world. It's not necessarily, it may be, both of them could be really geniuses. Like both sides could be having those extremely original ideas. But one, on the side of the end of the cycle, is coming from a perspective of wisdom, of experience and wisdom and trial and error, and kind of even then almost like they've lived through so much that they now can separate what's important from what's not important, and can see forward into the future and almost like feel the moment is coming to start a new life. Well, the new moon people, I mean, from my experience, I very often feel like I know something. I don't know where from, but there is going to be a very long way, very long journey of learning how to use that thing and how to express it, how to understand it, how to use it. And it's still not developed in a way. So the idea could be very good, but it requires a lot of work and a lot of living in order to be substantial. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, yes.
Yeah.
I have to check. I have to check how was the conjunction in the person I knew, and I bet it's an
Yes,
applying.
that would be interesting.
As soon as I can manage my screen, I check.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the conjunction? Do you want to now see the next aspect, which is happening after the conjunction? So Gabriela is asking in the chat, would this apply for moon conjunct any planet or just moon conjunct sun? So Gabriela, it doesn't matter which two planets we pick. You can pick, this is like an archetypal process, which can be applied to any two planets traveling together. So you can pick from the chart, say the moon with Jupiter or the moon with Saturn or the sun with anything, really. And then what we are asking ourselves is which one is faster, which one is slower. And if you use this initial model of the sun and the moon, the faster one becomes the sun, and the moon. The faster one becomes the moon. The slower one becomes the sun. So, and then when you have a conjunction, say between, now we're going to have in December, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Yeah, that's going to be something big, important, and so on. So Jupiter and Saturn are going to be together. And then which one is separating from which? Saturn is slower, isn't it? Jupiter is faster. So Jupiter is going to go forward and separate from the conjunction and make the next aspect, which is semi-sextile, 30 degrees, after a certain time. Yeah, and we can calculate that, depending on the speed of the two that we're looking at. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thanks very much.
All right.
I can ask, well, tell me to shut up. Could you, in natal, I have the conjunction Saturn-Jupiter. I have Saturn at 24 degrees Capricorn and Jupiter at 0 degree Aquarius. So it's a conjunction, it's a separating conjunction.
Okay.
So how is my Jupiter?
How much are they separating?
How much?
How many degrees between them?
6.
6 degrees. So you've got a conjunction, but Jupiter is forward by 6 degrees.
Yes.
All right. So obviously, they have just met, and because we know Saturn and Jupiter are about social things, social how we participate in the world. Very, very simply put, this is an oversimplification, but it's like how you participate. What is your opinion, feeling, and also physical involvement in the affairs of the world. This can be political affairs, this can be how the world is run, what's the system about, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And when you have a conjunction like this, you probably will feel like you want to get involved, that this is something that's important to you. You may be a little bit more social and political in your interests. You won't be completely like, I don't want to hear about this, I don't want to know what's going on, but you may be more interested. But also very emotional about your preferences, because it's a conjunction, it's still very young energy, and it's still not very, it's very subjective. In one word, you've got probably very subjective opinions. Is that the case? Do you relate to that?
Very subjective opinions.
About what's going on out there in the world. Are you passionate about that? Are you like...
It's difficult to summarize. I am interested. There were moments in my life when I was not listening to the news at all over months or even years, but I was I think I rebelled against my education. So as a child, I was already against the way I was educated at school because I needed to be able to move more like that, and I couldn't stay put on my chair, with my Scorpio Mars and thinking it and not
This
being
could have
outside.
to do with something else in the chart, not necessarily.
Yeah, but thinking of what you say, I felt very, very concerned, for example, on this question of education and learning, because I've spent my life learning, and I was extremely enthusiastic when I found out that there were, for example, people like Montessori, or someone like Ice Nail, Free Summerhill Children, if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
People who applied different ways and were able, instead of this kind of education, 1 hour of this, 1 hour of that, 1 hour of that, and you've got really to fit the mold and to be more in charge of your own learning. I was really passionate, and I've been all my life very, very interested in how you learn and how. I'm not an activist in schools, but very, very interested.
That's very interesting, because the Jupiter connection with the education system and how we organize these two planets are about how we organize our social life in general, how we organize the schools, the political system, everything basically, and how they function so that we can live together in a good way, in a peaceful way. And I've heard that it's very difficult for people like you born on a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, because the world is starting a new cycle of, the system is kind of restarting itself in the year when you were born. And it's the end of one whole 20 year. Jupiter, Saturn have a 20-year cycle, right? So they meet every 20 years. So if you were born on a conjunction, you were born on the start of the next 20 years. And everything is like, we want to throw away the past and we want to turn a new page. This is the atmosphere out there in the world, in society. And probably people born during a conjunction somehow get affected by that spirit of new beginning in the world. And especially in Aquarius, I imagine in Aquarius this can be quite rebellious, because Aquarius is looking for ways to solve social issues in a better way, to make things function in a better way out there. So we're going to have it in Aquarius now. So you are having this year yourself a return, Jupiter and Saturn return, right?
Yeah, yes, I have currently Jupiter and Pluto on my Saturn and Saturn on my Jupiter.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to interject.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder what month he was born, because I was born with Saturn at 23, almost 24 degrees, and Jupiter at 28 degrees. And now we have the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction within the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that I think he is also experiencing. So I'm getting like all excited that somebody maybe understands me, that we both have this, and that we have both conjunction. We're having these returns, and that the Jupiter-Pluto was within that structure that you're talking about. And yes, I'm passionate. I'd like to think I'm less subjective, but I am passionate about education, about alternative education. Here we are in this worldwide meeting, educating ourselves about this kind of stuff. I'm very passionate about social structuring and learning these kinds of ways of changing our educational system and going forth. So I think what you're saying, I'm totally validating what you're saying. I'm so excited about it.
Well, that's great, Laura. I will show your chart as well in a second. So we compare it with Jean-Marc's chart. I hope you don't mind, Jean-Marc. Just very quickly to see. I didn't get to you earlier when you said the conjunction. Didn't realize they were in two different signs. So Saturn is pretty much at the end of Capricorn.
Yes.
So you already had your Saturn return recently. But then Jupiter is 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's going to be... Was it going to be the first degree of Aquarius, the conjunction we're having now in December between Jupiter and Saturn?
I don't remember.
I think it's like 1 degree of Aquarius. It's meant to be the conjunction. So it will be right on top of your Jupiter.
Yeah.
And you would have a Jupiter stimulated a lot by this conjunction. in the same sign. Very interesting.
And to make it even more interesting, my Saturn return was the same Saturn-Pluto return in January. So he and I are kind of bookending this January-December manifestation. I'm getting goosebumps.
So here we've got it in the 7th. Let's see Laura's chart quickly. That's a different Laura. Sorry. I decided to do it through the website this time directly because I think now you can see a bigger chart, isn't it, than before. So Laura.
Can I just say that, you know, like if Jupiter is the way that you learn, as well as the education system, I think if it's going past Saturn, then it's picking up, if Saturn is your criticism of it, your critique of it as well, it's like, it might be what wakes you up to what's wrong in the system. So like then Jupiter takes that forward to create its own version of learning, it develops its own methodology or awareness or whatever. From that, that's the way I see it as well, that it's that sort of process of the conjunction. It's taking something from Saturn as it moves along, because Saturn is the slower planet as well. So how you learn is going to be changed by that. You're going to critique the system, I think, with Saturn there in the picture,
well,
I think.
Especially with it going into Aquarius.
Yeah.
So there will be a shift in the world as a whole, anyway, in the atmosphere, in the what's going on out there, and you would be more receptive to picking it up and to having something to do with it. That's the way I see it. Because at the end of the day, these are social planets. Jupiter and Saturn are not personal planets, but they become personal when they become entangled very much in our chart somehow. And when you have these conjunctions with your own, conjunctions or other major aspects with your own personal Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah, so it's going to be something like something's going on out there in the world, a big change, a big shift, maybe rebelliousness, maybe we already see it, but I can only imagine how this is going to even more aggravate itself at the end of the year and next year. But I guess you need to be careful, Jean-Marc, and also you, Laura, not to get into trouble also.
Uh-oh.
They won't, they'll be fine.
There has been already a lot going on since last year.
Why do so many people tell me that? Stay out of trouble.
Out of trouble.
Well, you've got it in Capricorn, Laura, yeah? You've got them both in Capricorn.
Yeah.
So you probably already went through the most of it. Yeah?
I hope so.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. So you guys were born in not in the same year, but very close to each other. You were
Same year.
Same year? Yeah.
I'm from 61, November, 4th of November.
Okay, yeah. And you are in,
September 1st.
It's literally 2 months difference between you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What day was he born?
The 4th.
4th of November.
Wow. 2 months and a couple of days.
2 months and a couple of days, yeah. All right.
There's something else I'd like to point out about the conjunction, like a different topic, I was curious about the last Venus-Mars conjunction that we had. And so I was looking it up. I guess it was August 24th of 2019. And one big reason why I was aware of that is because that was at 4 degrees Virgo. And you still have my chart out. And my sun is at 8 degrees Virgo.
What date was that again, Laura?
When?
What date?
August 24th of 2019.
Okay.
And so the Venus-Mars conjunction was at 4 degrees. And so I think what's really interesting is that you were talking about the first Venus, well, that conjunction is when the seed was planted. It was in Virgo. It was right on top of it was a couple degrees before my sun. But then the first Venus-Mars square was June 2nd, a couple of weeks ago. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, is something could have been planted at the very end of August, within the last year, And now this past month, we're starting to maybe feel that initiation of something being born.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me just go on here.
Just before you, I'm sorry, Laura, I don't think this is the right date, because
Okay.
maybe it's still in the same or something.
I think you've
You've
got
written July, yeah.
August.
Did I do July instead of August?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. That's my. I don't know why that happens quite often. Right, now we are at the right transit
Yeah.
showing. So here you're talking about this, isn't it? So Mars and Venus conjunction in the 4th degree of Virgo.
Right.
Okay, and
So
that
what
was
was the date on that?
yeah. Go on. Sorry.
What was the date on that then?
What you said. It's
okay.
Sorry, I had entered the wrong month.
Okay. And then I looked at it further. Oh, on June 2nd, Venus was at 14 degrees Gemini and Mars was 14 degrees Aries.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first square. And then it says 3 months after is the second square, and that's September 2nd. And you have my chart up. My birthday is September 1st, interestingly enough. And then Venus opposes Mars. Mars would be retrograde at 15 degrees Aries, while Venus is at 15 degrees Libra on November 9th, which is really interesting because that's a couple of days after his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And then this cycle ends July 13th of 2021. So this current Venus-Mars synodic cycle, is that the correct way of saying that? Or the cycle? Yeah. So just to give the dates of what we're currently under. So, you know, how is that affecting us and what kinds of things in our life are being planted? Like, you know, I've got a business that I've been trying to, you know, seed and start. And I'm hoping like right around now, this first square time, it'll be maybe birthed.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting, and I think maybe you would be able to pick up a lot of those answers of how on every stage that you have mapped out there, things are developing over time with this initial, whatever was you think may have been this initial conjunction about. As we go through the steps, because I think I really wanted to, maybe we're already spending too much time on this, but I really wanted to try to imagine, let's imagine it on the basis of that last cycle in Virgo, for example, that they met in Virgo, Mars and Venus, and how things progress over time as we go through the aspects. You know, Venus takes the impulse and goes forward, and then we've got. I will just quickly go back to this. Because we then got the first semi-sextile. I say the first because on the second side we've got another one, but this is the first 30 degrees from being together. Yeah? What do we expect? Not many people use this aspect. And that's why I wanted to maybe include these as well today, because that's very important. First step out. What do we do in the semi-sextile? What do you think?
Are we talking in interpretation of aspect in natal or in transits?
I think it's the same, isn't it?
The same.
As a principle.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do
as
that.
a principle.
I mean, it is the same as a principle. It's just that if it's a transiting thing, then obviously that transiting aspect is affecting everyone at the same time, and we then need to see, is it touching something in your chart, which is important. But if it's a natal, actually, I think more of a natal at the moment, as what it would mean for the person if they have this aspect in their chart. What do you think? If you have it in your chart, a sextile between, semi-sextile, sorry, a 30 degree, between, say, Mars and Venus. It's called focusing aspect. That's how Roger calls it, a focusing. Do you have an idea about that? Have you observed it, or? Dwayne, you're very quiet. What do you think of the semi-sextile? I'm curious.
You're reading my mind. To share what's actually been going on for me, since Jean-Marc spoke of dancing and the cycle, I just want to share a technique of engaging with the lunation cycle, the basic archetype of all of these cyclic relationships, engaging with it through dance. What I did at one point was to cast a circle, so a circle of stones or would do, or just draw a circle on your floor. Set up the quadratures, you know, the new moon, full moon, first quarter, last quarter, and then standing at the new moon point, enter into a dance. So what I discovered in attempting that was that for the new moon, I wanted to go down and be really small. Mm. So you collapse down to this incredible subjectivity, mm-hmm. and you move out from that point. So you move out then instinctively and start growing. Well, at the semi-sextile, you're going to have to, as Roger says, focus. So you start to get this focus. You've got a vector of intention that's moving ahead. As you come up to the first quarter, that momentum is at its peak. But in order for you to get to the full moon climax, you've got to, and he talks about this, I think, in the lunation cycle, it's about grabbing hold of the steering wheel and mm-hmm. turning it towards the vision that is becoming larger and larger. Mm. And so in your dance, you're actually then moving out and coming up to this high objectivity, and there's a peak. You know, you get the insight, and then there's the turning away, and the whole first half of the cycle is about moving out, growing, creating form. Once that form reaches its peak, then it's about shifting into letting go. And as you move ahead then from full moon to last quarter, there's a reorientation that's called for when you get to the last quarter. So at that point, you look back to the full moon, you check in with what's really important from that objectivity that I had at that point. What of that is important to carry forward, and what is to be let go of? And so at that point, there's this reorientation. And again, then it's about collapsing down to that subjectivity, letting go of all the non-essentials. And that's why we get to the point in the cycle that's associated with the seed. The seed carries within it only the essentials from that cycle. So I really, I encourage people to try this. Like, actually get your body into this this dance. It's really enlightening.
Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying there as well about the semi-sextile, because going back to my Venus, my outer bounds Venus as well, my Venus is also semi-sextile the Sun and Mercury as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that makes that figures into it as well, this love of dance, or this focusing of energy into my feeling it in my physical form, if you like, energy that way.
Yeah. Have you checked?
Focus, I wanted to ask you, Dwayne, do you do actual physical dancing is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that at all the different junctures, or just at that new moon and full moon?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that this is to dance the cycle is a good way to really get the archetype in your body. It's, as a practice, it's not something I do regularly, but there was a point when I did that, and it really helped me integrate the whole cycle.
So in the cycle, how often did you dance is the real question I was trying to get to. Did you dance? So did you dance every few days, or do you wait half? What was, when you were doing it as a practice, what was your practice? How often from new moon to new moon, how often did you put it in your body? Let's put it that way.
It wasn't something I picked up and did as a regular practice, but it was something that culminated, based on my work with the lunation cycle. It organically came forward. And then there was this big idea day. It was like, oh, I think I'll try this. And once I tried it, it was like, it was complete. You know, it was like I took the teaching into my body, and now I let it go. But
Okay,
as I'm sharing,
how often? I'm trying to get you to be specific.
well, I'm saying you might. It was only once.
Once. Okay, thank you. That was my question. If you did that at the every few days, or whether you just did it once.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I think it would make a great basis for a regular practice. You know,
Yeah.
dance the
It's like-
nation every morning.
Mhm.
It's a yoga.
I could see a dance as you were describing it, Dwayne.
Right.
I imagined, but because we all have seen at one day or another some kind of classical dance on TV, and I was really seeing the dance unfolding, and I think even looking at a good choreography maybe shows that.
Do you think this could be developed in a ritual, which, for example, we can take the 4 major points of the cycle, the conjunction, the opposition, and the 2 squares, and if we practice some sort of dancing, regardless, you know, whatever people are interested in, but how the energy, to observe how our energy is different and how we may be performing in a different way, in tune to the nature of that stage of the cycle, and how because these 4 points are really a journey of, if we think of Mars and Venus, for example, with a conjunction, we are thinking, maybe not thinking yet, but just feeling, I want to have relationships with the world or with someone else. There's just the impulse of wanting that, of trying to get into, you know, the idea of this.
Yeah.
Then at the first square, jumping a little bit through the first 2 other points, but at the first square, it's quite ripe, that desire, and we want to make it productive. We want to make it really moving, really something needs to be faced here. A turn of direction as well needs to be faced, because it's an adjustment, some sort of an adjustment in our way of doing things. Action has to happen in that first square, so it's more intense in the first square. Yeah, it's more moving, it's more dynamic, and there is some sort of conflict going on. That's why we've got a square and not something else, isn't it? But how do we get to there? There are 2 more steps before we get to the first. Yeah, if we want to meditate on that a little bit. Like my point was the semi-sextile. What is that semi-sextile about? It's about, for the first time, maybe starting in the first stage of the lunation cycle, we see the moon a little bit now. Yeah, we can see the outline of the moon a little bit. So presume if we make compare that to the feeling of Mars, Venus, just about separating from each other and making a semi-sextile, this could be something like, now I'm starting to get it, that I want to get involved in relationships consciously. I really start to see what this is about. Yeah, and starting to somehow face the reality of the other person, if we think of Mars and Venus. Yeah, recognizing that it's not just about what I want and what I want to get, but it's also about the other person, and I need to start studying them, focusing on them, and that's just a comparison, but we can replace this with anything else out there. Does it make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like the first realization that we need to adjust something and to learn about it. And then the next aspect after the semi-sextile is the sextile, 60 degrees here. This wheel is very convenient because we've got the 10 degrees separations, and we can very easily see how we get to, separating the circle into that many parts, exactly. And when we get to here, we are at the sextile, the first sextile, and it's 60 degrees. And what changes here? This stage is called organizing. So how do you feel about that one? Anyone has it in the chart?
Well, a sextile is also this when you apply skills.
Yes.
So if in a semi-sextile you're initiating the seed idea of your lunation or whatever,
Mhm.
then the sextile is that when you apply it, it's the skills to do it.
Yes, yes, very much so. But this is the first sextile. You know, we're going to have another one in the second part. And in this first one, as you said, Lauren, you are trying to kind of put your house in order in a way so that you can prepare for what you need to do. Because now you see, you know, in the previous stage, you started seeing what you want to do. And now you're really starting to put the pieces together and to gain skills, as you said, or to apply what you can do. So you try to make it work. This is the first, yeah. But it's like a learning action. You are still like examining the territory, but now you're trying to do it in a more sensible way, in a more organized way. Yeah, maybe trying to ask your partner questions now, or to really sit down and try to work out the differences that have started appearing, because with every next step you are getting more and more involved together, and more complicated issues start coming out. Yeah, in the sextile, it's supposed to be an easy aspect, but maybe the reason
Are we
behind
talking Mars and Venus as a sextile? Is that what we're talking
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, we're trying to just stick to a pair of planets. And in the beginning, just before you came, we decided why not make that Mars and Venus.
That's good. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, we diverge from time to time, but I'm trying to get us back to the cycle, so we can see how maybe it's interesting how things develop over time with the cycle, and one thing leads to the other. So if we didn't see clearly what we want to do in the semi-sextile, we won't be so motivated and energized and enthusiastic and visionary on the sextile to actually work for that. That's the kind of point I'm trying to make here. Yeah.
Actually, in my chart, I have Mars and Venus conjunct.
Oh.
So I've never thought about looking at it as a process.
It is. You know, that's the main thing, isn't it? That it is a process, and that's why it's so powerful. That it's interesting. I can see it in you personally. I don't know you personally, but from our last several online meetings, I think others would agree as well that you exert this charisma and personality and energy that is so typical for the conjunction.
Huh.
In what?
I have it in Taurus.
In Taurus, right? Have you felt the urge to build things and to kind of be sticking with things over time, but with this consistent?
I think, for me, I thought it had to do with the development of the voice and singing. And I also used to say, even a long time ago, Prince Pomerantz assists Lady Lauren, and I just think of that I assist myself to manifest. That you have to do, and then you also have to feel and be and realize. But I've never journaled Mars and Venus in, let's say, a lunation cycle. Or how would you take it? How could it be a movement how could it be a movement since they both have different, Venus is in an 8-year cycle, and, how could it be with those two planets? Could you?
Anytime two planets make a conjunction in the sky, they all go in their own speeds, in different speeds, as you said, in different cycles. But every now and then they meet. So every now and then we can check that for every two planets. How often, for example, Jupiter and Saturn meet every 20 years. We know that, isn't it? And this is the moment of the new moon for them. This is their new moon moment. Then the faster one, whatever happens to be the faster one of the two, goes on. It separates from the...
Would you examine from, let's say, if you're just saying now, you've switched the conjunction of Saturn, you said the 20 years. So would you make that 20 years, an analysis of 20 years, and say 25, 15, divide it up like that?
So I'm suggesting here, because that's one of the ways to do it, I'm suggesting here, let's divide it into 12 steps. divide the cycle into 12 steps. You can also, if you follow the lunation cycle strictly, you would divide it into 8 steps every 45 degrees. But here what we're doing, because it's like the psychological astrology part of this, the cycle of being looked into 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 30 degrees. So every 30 degrees. And if we divide the circle one step at a time is 30 degrees, then we're going to end up with 12 steps, isn't it? And that's from one new moon, from one conjunction of 2 planets to the next conjunction, when they meet again. And I think it's so interesting to observe that, to experiment with that, with any 2 planets, and also look at your own chart and ask the question, let's play with my planets and see, for example, pick any 2. See my Mercury with my Jupiter, for example. Where are they in their relationship? When I was born, what stage of their relationship had they reached at that moment? Were they just starting it? Had they just met? Or had they already been together and traveled together through the cycle and they've reached, let's say, an opposition? Or have they reached the second quincunx? So where are they together? And this is going to answer the question for us, what am I supposed to do with the functions of these 2 planets in my own life, in my own chart? Like, that, how are you supposed to use your Mars and Venus in your chart? You're supposed to use
what is their length of conjunction? How long does it take for them? Do they have a regular meeting time?
You mean Mars and Venus?
Yes.
I should have checked that. On the top of my head, I forgot. Do you know? Do you guys know, Jean-Marc?
Like 2.5 years or 2 years or something?
It's just over 2 years as far as I know, yes.
It's going to be 1 year and a few months. Because Venus is always close enough to the Sun.
Yes. But we're talking about Venus and Mars conjunction.
Yes, but I say this because the Sun is going to meet Mars every 1 year and a half, roughly. Mm-hmm. Because Mars takes 2 years to go all around the zodiac. So in 1 year, Mars make half a turn. So the Sun is going to meet Mars every 1 year and a half. And for Venus, it's going to be more or less the same. Mm-hmm. Because Venus is closer to the Sun than the Earth. So
okay, but the question is actually different. It's not about Venus with the Sun or Mars with the Sun. It's about Mars
Venus
with Venus.
Mars. Yeah, yes, but I was just explaining my reasoning.
Yeah. But do you know the Venus-Mars one? How long it takes from one conjunction to the next conjunction?
I reach the conclusion. It must be roughly 1 year and a half.
What is 77? So I just found an article here. It says the alignments of retrograde Venus and direct Mars occurred approximately every... No, that's something else. Sorry, let me just find the right information. That was good to establish, isn't it, in the beginning? How long could it take to make one full circle from when they meet until they meet again? So let's see.
Well, in these days... Oh, sorry.
I think I just found it, but let me...
The dates I gave before was August 24th of 2019 to July 13th of 2021. Mm-hmm. So that's 3 weeks shy of 2 years for this particular one.
Yeah, it's not going to be...
Yes, because you have to take into... No, am I wrong to think that you have to take into account retrogrades?
Yeah.
Yes, but you don't need to worry about that too much because you can calculate all these things. Yeah. You need an ephemeris for that, yeah? And that's probably with the ephemeris is the easiest way to check and see when are they making the square exactly. It's if you try to count the months, this may mislead you because of the retrograde motions. Yes, it may not be exactly that many months from conjunction to first square, for example, as we expect by just dividing by 4. Yeah, but if we have an ephemeris, we can do that. We can see. So, for example, if Mars and Venus are conjunct at 0 degrees Aries, this is imaginary. Yeah. But let's suppose the conjunction happens at 0 degrees Aries. We just need to see at what point they would stand at exactly 90 degrees from each other. And we can establish that with the ephemeris. And when we get that, we know that we have traveled 1/4 of the cycle. Yeah, that makes sense.
What it really takes is looking at a chart and seeing when is the conjunction point.
Yeah.
And then making a seed at that point, writing it down. What is your seed? To examine the process, it would take, I think, writing and thinking about, well, what am I seeding?
Yes, exactly.
Or what are the thoughts going on right now at the conjunction? And then in opening that book and looking at it at the square and say, what has happened in reality since that first seed thought? Have I,
That's such a good point, Lauren, because Rudyard is actually advising that we do that if we have, the desire, if we want to do that. But it could be a very interesting thing to experiment with. Say you were born on whatever aspect between Mars and Venus. Say a square, for example. So sometime before you were born, we touched on the new moon before birth last time, so it's similar.
Yeah.
How it's worth maybe checking out back in time to see this cycle within which your Mars and your Venus are interacting, and you happened to kind of stop the time. When you were born, it was like a stop motion of that moment. They had reached to the square, but then you check what was the conjunction. When did the conjunction happen? In what sign of the zodiac? In what degree? Maybe check the Sabian symbol of the degree. And this is supposed to give you some idea about what this big cycle between Mars and Venus, what did they start together? What they were supposed to seed, as you said. And then when you look back to your chart and you realize, now I am participating, I'm supposed to be participating myself in my life in the revelation of step 4, the square of that cycle. And what is meant to happen in that step 4? And how can I make it work somehow? I know this is a bit more advanced.
Step 4, because wouldn't you call, why do you say the number 4?
Because I count conjunction as step 1, semi-sextile as step 2.
Okay.
So conjunction is the subjective being. Semi-sextile is they call it the focusing aspect. Then sextile is the organizing, step 3. And then step 4 is the first square, and that's deciding. These are just keywords which Rudyard uses to describe the main thing that is supposed to happen at that stage. But because it's a 12-step division, we can also associate it with the signs of the zodiac. And they can probably help us a lot to figure out what this aspect is about. It's almost like the semi-sextile is very similar to like a Taurus energy, isn't it? Like then the sextile is quite similar to a Gemini energy. When we get to the square, we are kind of at the Cancer stage. Rudyard doesn't say that. It's just my association. Don't take it. If you don't like that idea, don't.
I would be saying too that at that square point, that would be a point of review. Yes. And a square causes a challenge. It's like, okay, I've taken an idea or an awareness at the seed, and I've let it grow. And then you think, okay, what have I actually, am I interested in this seed? Am I going to pursue it? How can I adjust it? And you can make thinning decisions,
Exactly. Yeah. But usually the decision here in the first square is not something that you just like sit down and say, oh no, I'm going to make a decision where this is going. It's a lot more extreme, because usually you need to deal with some sort of challenge from outside in the first square. Somebody's trying to, somebody or something, some sort of circumstances from the real world outside, which you're still learning about, is trying to prevent you or stop you or obstruct you in a way. So what you need to do is to try to figure out a way to make your vision real, your vision functional, and actually applied out there. So that's why they call it a crisis of action, because you basically need to learn how to act more effectively. and to compromise with somebody else that may have a different idea or is not that happy about your idea. People with Mars square Venus, for example, if we want to go back to our example, they may have this struggle, continuous struggle in relationships to compromise between the desires and wants and directions of the two partners, yeah, for example, and to not really having to learn how to live together and to be together in a way that there is no winners and losers, but there is some sort of a both sides are allowed to be and both sides are allowed to do, and eventually you need to fight for your stability and your idea as well in the square. It's a very different square from the other square when we get to the other side. Yeah. Here it's really a challenge of action. So you can have a square between Mars and Venus, and another person can have a square between Mars and Venus. But if one is applying and the other one is separating, you're dealing with completely different problems. You're both having problems. You're both under stress, under pressure. Something needs to be overcome. The direction needs to be changed. Something needs to be revisited. But it's a different thing. Yeah, it's a completely different thing. Here, it's about, they call it, the waxing square. It's the difficulty how to preserve your relationship, how to not let it fall apart because of the differences, how to maybe go through the first big marital crisis. We can, people that have a square usually go through very, very turbulent relationships where there really is a clash between them and another person. And the reason for that clash is that you both need to learn something about each other and about yourselves through living through something, through acting through the relationship. Yeah? You're not really understanding yet what's going on, but you are trying to figure out things as you fight with them.
How to make things work.
Or to make things work practically, actionally. Yeah, to make things work. That's right. And so it's like really, really having to be to guard against being unfair in your relationships, wanting everything for yourself, being selfish or being unreasonable. We're really learning to relate practically in this first stage of it's almost, I imagine it as marriage that has just started and the people have just started living together and facing for the first time the reality of having to organize a mutual existence with all its problems. Yeah?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I was just looking at my husband's chart, and I think he and I both have our Venus-Mars sextile in our own charts. So I think that's really interesting. We have a lot of grand trines between the two of us, and I think that's just one more complementary thing. So if I understand what you're saying, it's like, even though we've known each other 40 years, it is about learning how to get along with somebody else in a relationship, like the beginnings of, being able to spread ourselves out with somebody else. But I don't know if it's because it's complementary. I think we get along pretty well.
You both have the aspect in your birth charts.
I think so, yeah. Right. I don't know if you have my chart, but...
Yeah, well, we can go back to your one because I think it's open and see. So you've got Mars in Libra, like me, almost in the same degree, actually, 1 degree apart from mine. Very interesting, Laura. So, yeah, Mars in Libra and Venus in Leo. So, yeah, that's a sextile. Pretty close one. Pretty good, yeah.
And his is only 1 degree difference.
His is only 1 degree. Okay.
And it's the applying one, this one.
So, yeah, this one is... right. So, Venus is faster, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Venus is approaching Mars. So, you actually, Laura, don't have that same sextile that we were just talking about before the first square. Going back to here. Do you guys see this properly, the wheel? So,
yeah, it's the other way around then.
Yeah, so you don't have this sextile. You've got that one.
Okay.
What about him?
I'm gonna have to check his now.
Yeah, so yeah, you can check about him and see what's going on. But yeah, here in the first stage, we actually skipped it a little bit, didn't we? We went to the square straight away. But in order for things to start working in the square, we need to have been through the sextile. Something has happened in the sextile, and it was very enthusiastic, isn't it? The energy of the sextile. when we've got this belief that we can make it work, but we still don't know what we're dealing with. And now in the square, we face the reality of the differences between us and the other. So we need to meet these differences squarely.
Yeah.
Instead of staying constantly in the sextile, when things are interesting, they move, they are intense. But if we become very used to that feeling, good feeling, we may try to disregard the fact that there are things that need to be met squarely and problems to be solved, and then the square comes very hard.
So maybe the separating sextile, if when you think of Aries, the sextile would be Gemini. So maybe that's the moment where you date a lot and you're talking a lot.
Yes.
And you're exchanging a lot of words and.
And you're trying to have variety and enthusiasm and exploring things. It's very Gemini-like. Yes, this first sextile is very Gemini energy-like. You're right.
My husband's Aries is at 20. Mars is at 25 Aries, and then the Venus is at 25 Gemini. So he's coming upon his Mars return, and then with all this Gemini energy, it's really being activated.
Sorry, Laura, one more time. Which one is the Gemini? Which one is the Aries of the two?
Venus is in Gemini. The Mars is in Aries. Aries 25.
Okay, so that's the opposite to you then. So that's this one.
Yeah.
So they have met, Mars and Venus, in his case, and now Venus is a bit further down the line. So they're making the first sextile. And there is this more personal feeling about our one. Your one is a bit more mature kind of aspect, which acts a bit differently. But this one here is really enthusiasm, pure and simple, to explore and to mix and to really see where this is going to take you. But it can overextend itself. That's one of the dangers of the sextile aspect. Many people say it's a positive aspect and end of story. Actually, all of them can be very challenging and all of them can be very positive, even the squares, if we make the best use of what this stage is wanting from us. And the sextile can go really wrong, the first sextile, if we get carried away with the feeling of exploration and forget to somehow harness this energy and make something out of it. Settle down with the guy, not just date them, with the person, not just, have fun and go places and do things, but the square really asks you to, now what? Are you settling or are you separating? Which direction are you going? Asks the square. I think that's probably it. I don't know. Very similar to how Cancer.
Excuse me.
Yes, Lauren.
What I get is that I understand all of this theoretically, definitely in relationship. But I don't understand how I'm going to be able to apply this exactly in charts with people, or how we apply this sort of thing. I get the whole obviously conception, birth, climax, conclusion. I mean, but I'm wondering and I get it in a lunation cycle that at the beginning of a new moon, one can write a seed. But how can you do this how can this be practical?
But may I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you see a difference between the way you communicate, yours and your husband?
In my particular case or in general?
No, Laura, because she
I don't have a husband, so I don't. I'm on my own.
Who is the Venus?
I'm sorry, what was the question you were asking about me and my husband and our communication?
Laura, not Lauren.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have similar names. That's why the confusion.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I confused. Yeah, do you have different styles of communication? Because one would be more like Gemini, the other one more like Aquarius. So maybe the separating sextile would be more dynamic, more engaging, more initiating, more starting a conversation, and maybe the applying one would be more oriented towards the other, oriented towards the future, more philosophical, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I think that gets into a complicated conversation.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many variables involved.
Do you
And I
want?
think our Mars Venus is opposite each other, so there's that dynamic as well on the first
Yeah.
7th axis. So it gets really complicated.
Well, with relationships, I would suggest look at the synastry and analyze that aspect. Well, of course, you need to see what is each one of the two people dealing with in their personal chart, because this is what eventually comes to the synastry. But so you both have the sextiles, one separating, one applying, doesn't matter, and then you're dealing with an opposition together, and to see how one results from the other. If you didn't have the sextile this way and he had the sextile the other way around, you are not going to have the opposition in the synastry. You are going to have a different aspect, some different aspect. So these three things, I think, are interconnected, and you need to deal with all three. But I want to go back to Lauren's question. How could this be practical? I was hoping we can make it more practical in our conversation. I'm realizing that before we have the structure, kind of the theory bit, we can't really associate things with it, but maybe we can. We already have enough of it. So the way I see it, when I see somebody's chart and there is an aspect, say, between Mars and Venus, this is just my way of thinking, because they may not have an aspect, but let's say they have. And if it's one of those 12 aspects, then I know that their Mars-Venus functions will be some pivotal thing in their life. There will be drama around this. Something is going to be happening. And then I'm trying to narrow down what will be happening. What are they dealing with? And Mars-Venus interaction could be not just relationships, intimate relationships. It could be how they relate to the world, in what way they make a connection between what they want and what they do about it, of getting what they want in life. So it's a crucial, important question, isn't it, for everyone? How to integrate Mars and Venus in our charts. And if there is an aspect, I try to check what's that aspect, and then go back to this theory and see and try to see what they are prescribed to do with their Mars and Venus. Are they prescribed to find a way to be more enthusiastic and free-spirited with their energy? Or are they meant to face a hard reality and learn how to do something about it, if it's a square, for example? Or are they meant to figure out something, to understand something, to realize something objectively, which is the opposition? Or are they meant to learn how to explore the talent that they already have and just play with it? And this would motivate my advice to them. How do I use my mark? You see?
Thank you. That's a good. Thank you for a light bulb went on.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that's precisely what I tried to formulate as a question since the beginning of talking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Because it's wonderful to understand the cycle and from the germination and the growth of the plants and then when you translate that into a
I know this is not the most popular, easy topic we could do because it's so technical and so a bit advanced astrology, but why not try to, most of us are exploring charts, even if you're not an astrologer. And I think this way of thinking as a principle, we don't need to necessarily remember all of these steps, what they really mean and all of these aspects. We can discover them as we go along. But if we just think of the principle of step by step, and if you are born with this aspect, then that means that you're responsible to apply your energies in this particular mode, in this particular way. And very similar to how if your Mars is in Scorpio, it needs to act in a Scorpio way. But if your Mars is in Libra, it needs to act in a Libra way. And if you're trying to push your Scorpio Mars to be somebody else, not a Scorpio Mars, but something else, like an Aries one or a Taurus one or whatever, it's just not going to work. In the same way, if you're trying to make out of your Mars-Venus opposition in the chart, if you're trying to make something else out of it, it's not going to work. But there is a way out of the difficulty of the opposition if you really find the creative way to make the best of the opposition. I hope that makes sense. Because there is a way. There is a way you can be very happy with your opposition or very happy with your square or whatever. That's how I try to look at it. Because then you have this sense of meaning. Then you have the sense that it's not just a random misfortune I was born with a square between Mars and Venus. How bad, you know, how difficult that is. But you realize that you were born with this for a reason, because your job is to help this cycle of Mars and Venus move one step forward. You need to do your job there. And your job happens to be a square job. But why not?
And now I understand why Jean-Marc asked that question. That was an exact, I asked the question, and then you tried to show an application of how you would go. You went to Laura. Now I understand your at first I didn't even understand why would you say that right then? But now I understand much better. Thank you.
Great.
There was something after last week. I was really amazed, so I wish to share it.
Yes.
Because you were talking about, I come back to the cycle of the sun and moon, and you are talking about the new moon before birth, and the Sabian symbol of the new moon before birth. And I'd never checked it before, and I am a balsamic moon in Libra 4th house. And so I had my new moon before birth, and at 16 degrees Libra, and I checked the Sabian symbol, and it was a retired captain, and all the blurb was about storytelling, and it's storytelling has been is a lifelong theme for me. I loved story when I was a child. I've been I write stories. I have performed stories on stage. And I really have something, it's really a big thread in my life. So I was really, wow.
That's how it works every time I check that for someone, especially for someone I know. And especially when I tell them about that, it's like this wow, effect. Because
so when you're looking at it, would you look at, Jean-Marc, did you look at the moon?
I'm going to show you now, everyone, how it works, if you want. Because this is really great to explore. This symbol, the Sabian symbol for the degree where our sun and moon have met before we were born, is extremely powerful. Like it's setting the stage for our life. It's basically almost like, I see it as a purpose. It's somehow indicating our purpose, our big purpose, our general purpose. And could be very revealing and very reassuring, because if you are older and you've already lived many years of your life, and you check that, you discover that later, it almost like gives you this reassurance that you are on the right path, that you are somehow instinctively understanding what you need to do anyway. So you go to, if you use astro.com, I have chosen here Jean-Marc's chart, and because I've got it saved, and then you need to choose from the chart type, you need to choose this natal and prenatal new moon. Okay, so natal, and I know maybe there are so many other softwares where you can calculate this much better than this even, but I use this. So natal and prenatal new moon. Then we see the chart, and now this is his chart, but then on the outside of it, we see the transits for the day when there was a new moon before he was born. And we can see here, so Jean-Marc, you were born on the 4th of November.
Yeah.
But the new moon was on the 9th of October. You see here at the top, Lauren?
Okay,
yes. So that's giving you the date when it happened, when the new moon happened.
Right.
And here,
that part I know so far.
Yes, and then here you can see in which sign and in what degree it happened.
Okay.
So we see here the 17th degree of Libra.
Okay.
Is it 17th?
Well, I call it the 17th because it's 16th.
Oh, yeah,
it always takes you to the next degree.
Yeah. So now if we go to Roger's book, Astrological Mandala. So it's very good that we have it here. Not all of it, but just most of it. It's in this.
I have it at my house. I can just go to my kitchen and get it for you.
Yeah, okay, no, don't worry. We can look at it here.
Okay, I'll get them anyway.
So that's the one. And we go to Libra 16 to 30. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. And here you can check the degree. Yeah, 17th degree of Libra, which is exactly as you said. A retired sea captain watches ships entering and leaving harbor. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, this is a symbol. We can't really say exactly what the symbol means, and that's the point. It's a symbol. But people always, when I don't show it to everyone, you know, not to everyone I speak about Sabian symbols, but when we come to speak about it, and we check the degree of the prenatal new moon, everyone is like saying, well, that's something I can relate to. That's something I understand for some reason. Yeah. It could be an interesting experiment to check everybody's, you know. How about you, Dwayne? What's yours? I'm curious. And do you identify with it?
Oh yeah, I do. I'm just trying to remember the exact degree in this moment.
So
Aquarius.
yeah.
Aquarius 9.
There you go.
Flag is seen turning into an eagle.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so the final keynote is acting out of the vision.
Acting out the vision, and you've got the North Node in Aries.
Yes, and Rudyard has been a huge part of that, the vision. And
is that not a symbol which was also in his chart, or am I mistaken?
I don't recall it coming up in his chart, but it could, of course.
Okay, so yours is the 9th degree of Aquarius. That's your one.
Yes.
Now this is your chart now, and here we can see. I don't know. I have this. You know, I have traced maybe my interest to why Roger and not another. There's so many people. You know, there's so many good authors, and you know, everyone is attracted to somebody naturally in a way. And Roger's sun is in the 3rd degree of Aries, and I've got my North Node exactly in the same degree. So I thought maybe there is something to do with this. And there are several symbols like this. Like his ascendant is my Saturn degree. So I guess these sort of connections, when you have connections with another person by degree, you know, one planet from one chart with another point from another chart.
What did you think that it was for Dane Rutger? What was the degree?
The sun is in the 3rd degree of Aries. So I can show it here.
Okay. Mine is the 4th.
Yours is the 4th.
But I mean, I read it because it's 426. I read it as the 5.
Yeah, so it's the 5th. Yes.
But
so that's Rudyard's chart. So this is the sun in Aries, you know, 2 point something, and that's the 3rd degree.
That's where you have your ascendant.
No, my North Node.
Your North Node.
And his ascendant at 18 degrees Sagittarius is exactly the degree of my Saturn in 18 degrees Sagittarius. And yeah, there were, I'm doing, by the way, I have been asked by a guy to do a quick review of his book. It's called Harmonics in Astrology, a new book. Mike Erie, I don't know, maybe you know him from the group. And because he's basing most of his book on Roger and the cycle of being, it's a bit technical. So I was thinking, let's compare their charts. Why has this guy become interested in Roger's work and decided to base his work on that? And I found so many synastry aspects and interactions between the two charts, between Dane Roger and Mike. There is a sun-moon conjunction. There are many things going on. And it was interesting. They have, I think, sun-moon conjunction on both sides. So it's never a coincidence that we are attracted to certain things. But anyway, we diverged so much. Sorry about that. Okay, Lauren, do you want to see yours?
I would. I know it's March
The
15th.
Sabian, what was the Sabian symbol for Dwayne?
For Dwayne, 9th degree of Aquarius, right?
Yeah.
And Lauren?
I know it's March 15th. That is the new moon ahead of time.
Yes. 25th of Pisces.
It is March, and then the conjunction was.
Here it is. Do you see it?
Oh, new moon. Oh, there it is.
So 25th degree of Pisces.
Okay, let me
Make a note. I have so many topics I was thinking about for future meetings. And now another idea comes to mind. Maybe we don't need to do that next time or any time. It's just a suggestion. Would it be interesting if we, at least several of us that want to volunteer for that, we can explore our degree of new moon before birth with the Sabian symbols, and we can read it to the others and say, this is my symbol, that's how it is, and talk about what in your life you relate to with this symbol and how you see, how you relate it to your life. Would that be an interesting exercise to do?
I've even already done that. I can send you my copy. I did it for all my symbols of my chart.
Really?
Yeah, I did it like about 2 months ago.
Well, me too. If you guys are interested, I'm happy to share with you this. It took me quite a while, but I use it. It's great. I think it's great. Let me just see. So that's what I did for myself. This is just for my chart, but sometimes I do it for other people as well. So this is a list I have created. So here I list all the points in the chart in the first column, you know, all the planets, and also the cusps of the houses, like the cusp of the first, the second, so on, and the nodes as well. Then I make a note where everything is by sign, by degree, and by house. And then I check the symbol. Here are all the symbols from my chart, for example, one by one. And I have extracted from Rudyard's book. This is the second column here. This is this, for example, my new moon before birth is this symbol, right? And then this is from a website called sabiansymbols.com, which is by Linda Hill. It's a little bit more direct explanation. It's a bit more accessible explanation. And then I've got Rudyard's explanation as well for the same symbol. And that's how I meditate on them and, you know, read them or go back to them.
Then apply it and write up what has happened in your life that relates to the symbol?
Yeah, my idea is for a topic. For example, we can pick something, for example, the new moon before birth symbol, that degree. You know, for me, that happens to be 29th degree of Libra. So then I can tell you, oh, okay, this is my symbol. That's what it says. That's what the symbol itself. And then talk about how this idea or this topic or this thing is, you know, related to me. I see it related to me. Or you can tell me how you think it may be related to me. Yeah?
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Like it. I know you're a fan of the Sabian symbols as well.
Yeah.
And I am too. I mean, this could be an interesting way to explore it. Or maybe we don't need to stick to the new moon before birth. Some people really identify with some other symbol. You know, for example, the symbol of their sun, the symbol of their moon. And you can choose what you want to talk about. You can pick one symbol from your chart and say, now I'm going to tell you how this is, you know, playing out in my life in a way. Yeah. And we talked about Jordan Peterson in the beginning, and I was using that in the last few days to explore him, to investigate him, because to me he's new, and I wanted to check, well, Gemini, a little bit suspicious here. Is this guy telling the truth? Is he being really honest? Let's check the degree, you know, what sort of thing this is going to give me back. And yeah, I haven't checked all the degrees, but it is a very interesting exercise for me to explore people I don't know, because that gives me so many additional pointers about the chart. Yeah, they seem to work somehow.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you say like you use it for validation, because I think I kind of do that too. It's like sometimes if I know somebody's chart and I can kind of get a feel or read about it, then I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I'm dealing with. And for my Virgo-y, Mercury mind, it's very helpful.
Yes. Virgo mind, yeah, I've got that too.
Was mine Pisces 25 or was it 25 something? Would I be looking at Pisces 26 when you?
No, you would need to be. So when you use the book.
Oh yeah, 25.
So it's in the two different websites that I use. It's different. It's very confusing. If you use this one, the Rudyard book, of course you do. So it was 24 something Pisces. You know, the chart says 24 something. Then
Right.
you go to
25.
Pisces 25 in the list here. But then
Yeah.
if you use that one, which I also like very much.
Like for the Sabian symbols. Have you ever seen that one? It's not Dane Ridger, but it's
Mark Edmund Jones.
Mark Edmund Jones.
Well, Mark Edmund Jones is the original. Good.
Because they say different things, and sometimes the ones in this book make more, I can relate to them more, and sometimes more from that book.
Yeah, there is no rule. I mean, basically, Mark Edmund Jones that's your one as well, the same as your one.
It's the same?
It's the same.
They have such different covers.
Yeah, different covers, maybe different editions, but it's the same book. Okay. And this book is the original one. The person behind the Sabian symbols is Mark Edmund Jones, right?
Yes.
Originally.
Or Ellie, the woman who actually had the vision. Yeah. What's her name? Ellie or
something like this, yeah.
Elsie Wheeler.
Yes, Dwayne?
Elsie Wheeler.
Elsie Wheeler, Elsie Wheeler. And so you can read the story and everything. Why don't we make a meeting about the Sabian symbols? It would be interesting. Yeah, and tell the story. Maybe Dwayne can tell us the story of how they came about and what was the whole thing behind them. Shall we? Would you like to do that?
Sure.
Good one.
Okay.
I also was thinking, but I don't think Dane Ridger, did he talk about Chiron much?
No, he didn't, because Chiron was discovered in 1977.
Right. Because I was thinking that would be an interesting discussion for us, but it wouldn't relate to Dane Ridger.
So unfortunate. I would have loved to hear what he has to say about Chiron, and I'm sure he would have made a big deal of it, because I'm sure he would have recognized that it's important. Maybe he did, but it was just not enough time. He died at 95 years old in 85, and Chiron was discovered in 77.
I think.
Yeah. So and he wouldn't, even if he knew about Chiron, I think he would have realized that it's too early to make any conclusions and no time to observe it yet and see what it really is doing. So unfortunately, we don't have much about it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But yes, I like some of the times. You know what? He reformulated the symbols based on Mark Edmund Jones. But in this one, you would notice that Mark Edmund Jones is saying something like, if this symbol is positive, it will be that meaning. If it's negative, it will be the other meaning. And Rudyard ultimately didn't like that negative positive interpretation. It was a little bit outdated. You know, people at the time of Mark Edmund Jones, they were thinking about astrology in a slightly more black and white way, let's say. So, but I like the book as well. It's a good book. Yeah.
Madalena, just about the degrees again. So if, like, say my sun is at 10 degrees 26, would I count that as 10 degrees or 11? Because it's under halfway, isn't it? Halfway to, it's under halfway.
Go up. You
always go up if it's over.
It always goes up. Yeah, it always goes one up. But I have my own theory about cases when it's something, say 10 degrees and 50 something minutes, or after the 50. You know, every degree has 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I have sometimes seen that when I'm not sure about this, but it's my theory, experiment, that if the degree is already if it's 10 degrees 55, for example, it's probably already in the next one. So if it's 10 degrees 55, it may not be the 11th degree, but it may be the 12th degree. Does that make sense to you?
Why would you do that?
Because in many cases, I discovered that the Sabian symbol for that next degree makes more sense than the one before. Because maybe the pulling strength of the next, it's almost like with the aspects, we are very close to the next aspect, very, very close, so that the magnetic force of it is pulling us more strongly than the one of the previous degree. But that's too much. I mean, that's probably too much details there. But sometimes I'm struggling to figure out which degree is it. Are we still there, or are we moving to the next one? Or cases when it's like 0.0 something. Yeah. Anyway.
Because for me, I think that I would veer towards, if it's under 30, like say 10 degrees 26, that's more in the 10 than the 11, because it's nearer
Maybe
the
that's
10.
too much of an orb, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think for the Sabian symbols, it's probably too much. You have to bear in mind which planet is it. Which planet?
Well, I was looking at the sun, actually. I've just got the book out there.
Oh, so if it's the sun, there is no question about it. Because you need to think that for the sun to make a difference in its position, more time needs to pass. So it's not a matter of minutes like with the moon, but it's a matter of hours. So if your son is born, what degree did you say again?
10 degrees 26.
10 degrees 26. Well, he's definitely born in the 11th degree. Of what sign?
Right, okay.
What sign?
Well, I'm on the 13 sign system, so
okay, let's
Queen of Vicus and Scorpio, one of the two, or Sag in the other one. So yeah, I can be any
Just for the sake of
it's kind of irrelevant at the minute, but the Sabian symbols will fit for any of the systems because they're the actual points in the sky anyway. So it still applies as in the tropical system. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, they have to do with the degrees of the 360.
It still applies whatever sign you're in, I think.
Yeah.
To that degree, doesn't it? Because it's about the degrees anyway.
And do you want, just for the sake of an experiment, just give me one example so I can show you this website works differently. So for this website, you take things literally. You see that in the chart of your sun, it says 10 degrees something. Which sign of the zodiac? Let's say Scorpio, for example. So if you go to Scorpio, you need to enter 10. Yeah? So you enter 10, but then when you look it up, it converts it to 11. Yeah?
Well, that's told us then, isn't it?
Yes. So this is a bit more accessible website where you don't need to think. This website is more made for people that don't know what they're doing. So they would take it literally and they would enter the degree as they see it in the chart. So that it corrects the mistake for them.
And for Linda Hill, whose version of Sabian symbol does she use?
The same. It's just the way you calculate what degree to look at.
No, I mean, I didn't ask the question well then.
I know.
Is she using Dane Rudger's information, or is she using like Edward Jones information?
Both and none. She's got her own. Yeah,
she
has also made the reformulations. She has also offered a description, some sort of a meaning for each one of those aspects. And her meanings, I was a bit skeptical because I was sticking to Rudyard and I was saying, oh, why should I look elsewhere? But then her meanings are more accessible, more down to earth, more life. Yeah, they're not contradicting. Most of the cases, they're not contradicting Rudyard or Mark Edmund Jones, but they are a bit like, maybe a little bit more superficial, let's say, but they can be very helpful. So you can understand the aspect in another lighter way. Yeah. So that's why for me, I have done both in my own table for Sabian symbols. I've got hers and I've got his at the same time.
I see. Okay.
Because
there's also James Burgess.
James Burgess, yeah, is. So now, if you look here at the bottom of the document, I have done a shortcut. So if imagine this table is empty and you're just starting to fill it for yourself. I have done every pair of signs here. Yeah. At the bottom. I can send you this document. This can save you an enormous amount of time, because then if this is, let me show you actually the template. Sorry, I'll just minimize all this. I've got a blank template to show you how this works. And
wow, you are really a worker.
Yes.
6th house.
A worker bee.
Or Virgo in the 13th sign system. There you go. So I just want to say that.
I'm a Virgo.
You would be in the 13th sign system, yeah.
Makes sense, isn't it, Paula?
And what degree of Virgo? When you say you're a Virgo, are you referring to your sun?
No, I'm not a Virgo in the normal.
Oh, okay.
Paul is saying she's calculating obviously my chart in her system, and I turn out.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Sorry for this is not loading quickly enough. Come on. Oh, is it loading the same thing? So.
When does Mercury go direct again?
So
Very soon.
Okay. I opened the Jordan
Peterson
one. So I had just started working through the Jordan Peterson one. So I'm nowhere still. But this is how it looks when it's empty. So now if I want to do that with the symbols, I open the chart of the person. Here it is. And take for example, the Venus is already filled in, Mars. Say Mars. Mars in 11th degree of Taurus we see here, right? So I go back to my table. It seems like I've already done it. So Mars, Taurus 11th degree. And this is the description by Linda. And then I'm going to fill in the other description here. And here you just enter, say, for example, he's got, I go back to the beginning because it's easier to see. We've got ascendant in Taurus. So I do this. In what degree? It's in the 24th degree. So I say here 24. And then I go down to my shortcuts in the bottom. You see that? And I go to Aries and Taurus. And I look for it. So it's 24 degrees of Taurus. And here, that's the one. Yeah? Copy. And paste. And now I have it. Yeah?
Nope,
That's how I do for every single degree.
13.
Wow.
And then next one is like descendant will be obviously Scorpio 24. So now I go to here and I find it. Yeah. Scorpio. So these descriptions I took from James Burgess, because Dwayne mentioned there is another website called, when you look for Sabian symbols. We're already turning this into a Sabian symbol talk. But anyway, so Sabian symbols, just in Google, there is also this website, which is also quite good. Yeah.
How did we get here?
This one, I just went to Google.
No, I'm joking. We were on aspects of Mars and Venus.
Oh,
and now
how did we get to
nation and looking at the Sabian symbol of that conjunction and how it led to the purpose, right, of a person's life, potentially that, and then it kept going.
Yeah. Why not? Well,
why not?
Well, this is not meant to be structured. Talk about something.
Viewing in my mind sometimes.
Yeah.
How do you end up where you end up?
Yeah. Do you want to do the Sabian symbol talk next week?
Yeah.
Next week I'm probably not there because I will be between England and France.
Oh.
So
Okay, then we're gonna choose something boring for next week.
yes, please do something boring next week.
So you can join us on the following week.
But you can start the conversation and carry on the week off.
Yes, we could take 2 times for it. It's so big.
Probably will anyway.
So, is that an interesting topic for everyone? I want to understand. Are you all, is that something you would like to explore? Because that's quite unusual. I don't see a place where they teach Sabian symbols at all. At least I haven't heard. And they can be fascinating, I think.
Obviously, I'm into it, but
yeah.
You know what would be really interesting is if you said you would share that document, if we were to take the time between now and next time to start looking at our own planets and our own charts. That's our homework assignment for next time. So we have
fill your own chart, fill your own document for your chart. I've got mine printed out because in the last couple of weeks I have been exploring them. So I've got them here, all my symbols for this same thing that I showed you. I printed it out, and sometimes when I'm just having coffee and chilling out, I look, say, at my Venus symbol or my whatever else, and then I try to work through things, especially if you're having some sort of transits going on to your chart at the moment, which are important. For example, you, Jean-Marc, are going to have an important transit to your Jupiter. So it's worth checking out the Sabian symbol for your birth Jupiter.
Yeah, it's already happening.
Yeah, and this can give you some ideas about how to work through the period of that planet being under attack at the moment. For example. Yeah? So we'd like to do this then. We can fill the table if you want. I will send it to all of you. So in this usual email that I send to everyone that have signed up for today, I will also put the document in there, the blank document. And you can do it if you want. And next time we can share, each one of us or whoever wants to can share one symbol from their chart and talk about it.
Thank you very much. That's very generous of you, Radovina.
Yeah,
my pleasure. My Virgo pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want, Dwayne, do you want to tell us a little bit? But please don't make a presentation. You don't have to make a whole presentation. But if you want to tell us a bit of the story about the Sabian symbols and how they came about, and next time.
Sure, I'll do that. You bet.
Yeah, that would be great.
I have a question. If you have this kind of information, where did Rudyard learn? How did he learn?
He met Mark Edmund Jones personally. I have read that Mark Edmund Jones was the one that opened the door to Rudyard towards psychological astrology. Before that, Rudyard had been interested in theosophy a lot and working with people along these lines, but he knew nothing about astrology. The little bits that he knew were so outdated that he wasn't really aware that astrology can be used psychologically in that way, can be applied to psychology, until he participated in some lectures that Mark Edmund Jones was organizing back in the 30s of last century. And they met personally, they became friends, they became interacting, and he was like he got this revelation of what do we have here? I mean, this is a total new world of how. Then it occurred to him how he can make the connection between psychology, especially Jungian psychology. I think by that time he was already quite familiar with Jung and astrology, and he took to the task as far as I got it. But he knew him personally. And he basically got hooked, I think, into this Sabian symbols idea and developed it even more than Mark Jones.
And Mark Jones was allowed. He gave him the permission to use all his work. It's based on his, and he endorsed him. Said, "Okay, here's what I've got. Run with it."
Yeah.
And I remember reading about it was really done with his blessing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. They were very close as far as I know, and they didn't interact only on this Sapien Symbols thing. Also, the book that I showed you last time by Mark Edmund Jones, the guide. I forgot the name. Let me just see. So the guide to horoscope interpretation. This is the first. I think it's the first time when somebody was laying out the different arrangements in the charts, you know, the bucket chart, the bow chart, the seesaw chart, these arrangements. So they're in this book. And then Rudyard built on top of that as well. So he had his own version of that as well. Yeah. So a lot of connections there.
And I love it that Dane Ringer was also a musician.
Oh yeah, mostly composer.
I mean, I've got some of his books on that.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Some of the ones on music are also on the free website, on the Codia website. And I also have a very interesting biography about him, and it mostly concentrates on his other works, not on the astrology that much. We know him as an astrologer, but he was a lot more than that. A lot more varied interests. And I would hardly recommend the Essential Rudyard if you're interested, because it's short, but it can give you an introduction and an idea of everything, that the main ideas by Rudyard, the main philosophy, and not just the astrology, but also the other things that he was involved in. And that was written by his wife, Lewa Rael, and you can find it here. This can be read in a day, basically. That's not, a big work or something like this, but it's a very good introduction to and overview of, and it's free here. You can read it from here. I'm going to send you a copy of that on the chat just now. So where is it?
Where would you send it to?
I'm just sending it now as we speak in the chat window.
Oh, in the chat.
Here you go. You can just click on the link. I hope it's working this way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as you are sharing the screen, it's not possible to. Is it? Yeah, it is.
You should be having an access to the chat window somewhere.
Yeah, actually, yes. I've left the chat. I've left the. Actually, I don't know if I am on my computer or on your screen now.
No problem. I will make a note to include that link in the email as well. So you have it in the email. Mm-hmm. But it's literally on this Codia website, so you can even find it yourself. It's called the Essential Rudyard. Yeah, if you type it in Google, also it will come out straight away. So it's like a was it the leaflet, Dwayne? She wrote the leaflet and she was distributing it to, I think, to people at one of the last conferences they organized, and both of them were speaking at in 1983, if I'm not mistaken, and he died in 85. So he was mostly productive in his last 20 years, believe it or not. So after the 70s, which is amazing, which is interesting. Okay, well, where are we going from here? Going back to our aspects journey, or are we talking about something else? Any questions? I know you are interested in so many other things like the formations in the charts, but it's never ending.
Yeah, I had a bunch of different ideas. Like one, you've talked about the different houses. I don't know if that's an idea to talk about pros and cons of some of the different houses.
Yeah.
I'm also really struck. We've seen some of the charts, but there's a lot of synergy between this group.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if at some point, to talk about the synergy, maybe talking about the Sapien symbols we'll get to know each other's charts more. That would lead towards synergy or not. I don't know.
Yeah, Laura, that's very interesting. I think what I may try to do, maybe for next time, but we'll see, I may try to look at the charts of those of you that are quite regular. And I think it's probably about 10 people at least that are here almost every time or quite often. And I can try to see if there are any repeating degrees, any repeating, degrees on the same point of the zodiac, if we have something coming up. Yeah, and then we can check together the Sabian symbols of that and try to see. So, for example, the same Sabian symbol that I have for my, say, for my moon, somebody else may have it for their Chiron, somebody else may have it for their ascendant. Things like that could be discovered. Yeah.
And then I also noticed that a lot of us have stellums, and stellums with our sun.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah.
Well,
so I would imagine a lot of us would enjoy that kind of a discussion.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good idea. We already did 6th house, 12th house. That's one of my favorite discussions we had so far, the 6th house, 12th house axis. And if you want, one time we can make another pair of houses like this again.
And I would like, since I've almost doubled down on, I like equal houses I love geometry, and you like the Kapanas?
The process-oriented approach, yeah.
So, and I can't seem, and so I was thinking maybe we should have even a discussion about that, and looking at a chart with the different ways of the way you do houses and the equal system house, which I prefer. That's an idea of discussion.
Yeah, that's great. Great idea, and it will give us a chance. Maybe it will give me a chance to a little bit share with you the why philosophically. I mean, there is no right and wrong, of course. I'm not against the equal house. It's just there is probably one particular reason why I like any sort of house system which is not equal, which is not based on the zodiac, but it's based more on determining horizon meridian, which is there are actually two groups of systems. One is the zodiac is the most important thing, and the other one is, well, yeah, the zodiac is important, but that's not the most important thing. We need to really pay equal attention to the houses distribution and the horizon meridian cross. So just because for me, and I'm basing that on Rudyard, because he makes a case about it. He makes a pretty serious case about it, why it's not a good idea when you're trying to work with astrology psychologically, not statistically, not scientifically, but psychologically, why this is giving you a bit more of meaning, because then you really make it personal for the chart of the person that you are working with. Those systems that are not purely based on the zodiac, they are one idea more personal charts, because they place the person at the center of their own universe in a way, and they distribute the houses taking into account that individual factor. And to me, this is a very crucial thing, because that can really make a difference to the interpretation of the chart.
It does make a huge difference.
Yes, because the houses, to me, the houses are, in my own scale, the top thing, because that really gives us an idea of the circumstances around which our life revolves, and the experiences we're going to have, and the life of the chart. So the zodiac is extremely important, yes, but if we purely base it on the zodiac, we're missing a lot. We're missing a lot of things. And I mean, equal houses may be great for other types of astrology, better for other types of astrology, like mundane astrology, or anything that's not very personal, anything that's more, maybe for other purposes. That's just my way of thinking.
If I could get back to my original screen, I could mute it.
Yeah. Thank you, Warren. Yes. Happens. Okay. Any other ideas, questions, things? I don't hear you, Gabriela. Yes, no.
If we do another house axis, I would love to do first house, 7th house.
Me too. Yes. Me too. I'm very personally, I'm very interested in that axis. Anyone else likes it? Has an idea?
Yep. Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. First
This
house,
is a
7th house.
question
It's fundamental.
I just want to know, since I pushed on the link to see the essential ridger and outlined by Layla Rael, I can't seem to know how to get back to your screen, and I'm stuck on that. And can you tell me how I do that?
Well, maybe my screen is minimized somewhere down at the bottom of your.
No, you can minimize your
minimize
audio.
the thing that you're looking at the moment.
Yes.
Let's see how I can do it. I'm not the greatest at.
Oh, from top, from the top right-hand corner of your page, there is the 3 signs, the cross.
Oh.
Did you manage?
No, then that got rid of all the people's pictures. One second.
You don't get rid of us.
Higher than that.
No, I can go here. Then I'm back to an empty Zoom page. Maybe I don't understand what I'm. Oh.
You have a keyboard, Lauren. Do you have a keyboard?
You can close the empty Zoom page.
Yeah, you can
close that. And then I'm back to, maybe I need to enter the Zoom meeting again.
No, you are in it.
No, you are with us. We can see you.
There.
Is that not your page open to Essential Rudyard?
Yeah, mine is open too to Essential Rudyard.
So I think there's a confusion.
Oh,
that's mine. That's not yours.
Okay, and now I've gotten rid of it. Darn it! How do I reestablish? Let's see. Maybe this. I don't want to waste everybody's time just because I'm confused.
No problem. No problem. This whole thing is it's not very easy. So I'm also getting used to it. Okay. Anything else about, because we can stay for a bit more if you want, or we can go and choose what we do next time. Are we settled on the Sabian symbols?
Yes.
Good. Yes, I like that. All right.
Could I just ask, did I misinterpret the intention for this week? Because I thought we were going into aspect patterns.
Yeah, that was exactly. No, you didn't. It's my fault completely, because I thought let's start with going through the cycle quickly based on some sort of example, but we drifted so much away from that we never touched on the patterns.
Yeah.
So yeah, we still have time, so let's speak about that a bit, at least.
But I just want to say that I've taken such a valuable thing away from today's session, which is that 2 sextiles are not the same and 2 squares are not the same, and I had never realized that before. So
that's one of the major misconceptions in astrology now, and I think what I'm trying to be some sort of a advocate for wherever I can, whenever I can, is opening up for this way of thinking about it, because that's a completely different way, which I find a lot more valuable and good for working than the standard purely geometrical one.
It would be great to analyze our own aspects in this slide to keep, because we grappled with a real problem, which is we understand the theory and the poetry at the same time, but my Venus is applying sextile to my Mars.
Yes.
Tell me what's going on. Tell me
this book that we looked at last time, the Blue Book by Roger and his wife, Astrological Aspects, it goes through all the phases, all the 12 phases.
Astrological aspects.
This is the book for that, and if you get that book and if you read through it, that's really, for me, this was completely opening the door to understanding astrology in a much more, I think, how can I say, more mature way, more real way than just kind of memorizing things that I don't really understand well, but we all memorize those things, that a sextile is a good aspect, an easy aspect, but we don't really get it. What's the difference between a sextile and a trine, and what's the difference between, and they go one by one, so you can open it up for yourself if you want.
Yeah, well, I will do it for myself, certainly.
You would enjoy very much, I'm sure, Jean-Marc. This is something you would appreciate. Yeah, it's a real good book. Yeah.
So astrological aspects.
Astrological aspects, yes. I don't think on the internet there is anything matching it, apart from that one that I showed you, that kind of brief overview that I showed you by Michael Mayer in this Codia website, Eon. But this is more, I mean, that's not really, it's more of a quick overview. It's not really helping you understand it if you don't know it from before. I don't know. Is there anything else, Dwayne, about, do you know of any other book that's online that they are laying out the same thing?
Oh,
I'm not aware of one.
The Person-Centered Astrology book by Rudyard, Person-Centered Astrology, I showed it last time. That one, he goes into this a bit as well, you know, going through the aspects quickly as well. So, but yeah, this one, Astrological Aspects, it's called A Process-Oriented Approach. And so what pattern in the chart is interesting for you?
Can I just say, I probably have to leave the meeting in order to get back where all I see are the attendees.
Okay.
And I want to see your screen, so I don't know how to get it back. I'm trying everything I can.
Yeah, feel free to go out and come back in.
So I'm thinking if I leave somehow and come back in, it might be better.
Yes, of course. Feel free. I can let you in again.
How do I even leave?
Just one thing. I found if I click on the Zoom icon, it brought the full screen back again. So I don't know.
Icon. Let's see where is okay, here's the Zoom. Participants 9, share screen, option, video. What would I do? Share screen or no? Participants?
I just tapped on the icon and it
just
brought
the icon. When I press on the icon, it gives me mute audio, stop video, participants 9, share screen, chat, invite, record, audio options, video settings, leave meeting.
Yeah, better off leaving and coming back in if you just want to get in quickly.
Go to leave meeting in this list.
We can't see your screen. So.
I'm going to say goodbye because it's time to.
All right, yeah, it's getting late, so I'm sorry to keep you, but yeah.
Okay, so thank you. There were very, very interesting points broached, and yeah,
Great.
I would like. I like generally when you explain. I like when you explain how Rudyard thinks, or when you. There are very interesting things to talk about, and I'm interested. Yeah, in every topic when we dig more into the fixed stars, the predictions, the progressions, the progress new moon, so everything.
I hope we can continue exploring together if you join us regularly. That would be great.
Yeah, I'll do my best to keep my Thursday.
Yeah, I always have a recording, so if you missed it but you want to watch it, you can always do.
Okay, but I think I would rather read the books of Rudyard.
Yeah.
Then I prefer to be here with you alive than being in front of a screen and shouting and you can't hear me because it's a recording.
Well, okay. I appreciate it too because our charts are so similar, and I think we can gain some insight about that.
Yeah, that's also things can keep talking about it. All right.
All right. See you next.
Have a good evening. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Do you want to talk about any of the formations and things? Maybe take a couple of examples or something, and finish this way. I can still stay for another half an hour if you want.
Rodalina, are there any, like, say if you've got a sextile and a trine, or a sextile and an opposition, that's not a thing, is it? It's just a formation, but it doesn't have a name, does it?
Yeah, okay, let's clarify a bit. So the formations, so we've got, on the one hand, we've got this thing about charts falling into one of those categories, like a bucket chart, a boat chart, a seesaw chart. This is when, as a whole, when you take a look at the chart, you see geometrically and how things are distributed. You don't even still look what is what, what sign the planets are in or so on. You just, when you first look at the chart, if everything is kind of, let me show you as an example. Okay, let me show you my chart just because it's a good example for, I don't remember others how they were structured. But when you see this chart and you don't really know yet the details, immediately you realize that so many planets are stuck in one side of it, and then there is like one planet on the other side. And this is a pattern. This is one of the several possible patterns that people examine when they look at charts and they see, okay, well, here we've got a chart with a big concentration of energy on one side of, and it's usually important. Is it around the ascendant? Is it around the descendant? Which side of the wheel it is? And this is called a bucket chart because my chart's got a lot of things on one side and then one planet opposite that on the other part of the chart, of the wheel, that is kind of, they call it the handle of the bucket. And there were several formations of that. There could be a formation when the person has several planets on one side and that are forming opposition, very clear opposition, to several other planets on the other side of the chart, and there is empty space between the two, empty space between these two opposing sides. And this is called the seesaw chart. And all these formations you can read into that book, about what they may mean as a tendency if you have your chart structured in that way. And that's one part of the story. And also Rudyr has things about it as well. But then out of these formations, we've got the actual aspects make interesting patterns in the charts that are code, yod, mystic rectangle, grand trine, and all sorts of things like that, a kite. And for that, we touched on last time.
Yeah.
We touched on the
what I was saying is that if you don't have anything that fits into that, like say a yod or a mystic, whatever, then is it still a thing, or is it just like a combination of aspects? Is it actually is it a notable thing or not? Or does it matter?
My belief is that every chart is as interesting, as important, and as notable as any other chart. It's just something, when you have a pattern like this, you can identify something specific as a tendency that may be going on for that person, making it a little bit easier for you to understand the direction. But there is also such a thing as a scattered chart. Rudyr is talking about when he's laying out all those patterns, he's saying, well, at the end of the day, there could be one with no pattern, with nothing really, that you can identify with. And this also has a meaning on its own. This also has a, it's basically saying that the energies of this person are not going to be concentrated, pointed, directed in a certain particular way, but there would be a tendency to scatter yourself around, which can result always in something positive and in something negative. It can result in this, total dispersion of energy, not knowing what you're doing, how to use your energies, or it could be spreading your tentacles in so many different aspects of life and areas of life that you presumably have a broader vision, a broader experience. So we can speculate on this. Nobody really knows what they mean, but it's very interesting to explore if there is a prominent pattern in the chart. But again, I don't think that if you don't have anything like this, it's less of an interesting chart. It's like the aspects. Like if you have an easy aspect, you still need something to do something with that aspect. And it's not less important than a hard aspect.
When you have you ever heard of the word display chart?
Yes, that's one of the ones that I think Mark Edmund Jones was. Is it the splash chart you refer to?
No, display. I've heard that display just means that they're all over. They still have aspects, but they're just all over the chart.
Yeah. So here is the last one in his list. It's called display chart. Yes, the last one in the. So he's got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of them. Mark Edmund Jones is talking about 7 patterns like that. And the last one of them is a display type, he calls it. And that's, just a second.
Is there a difference between the splay and the splash?
Okay.
Because I thought that was a splash when everything's just scattered everywhere. But a splay is more, it's got concentrated points, like a couple of conjunctions or stelliums or something.
Well, they still have, I mean, I don't know. Back when I was 28, I was told I had a splay chart because the planets are all the way, I mean, there's things everywhere in the whole circle.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes,
then
sometimes there can be more than one formation at the same time, which is, I mean, quite rare, but it's possible. So if you want, I can tell you quickly the difference between the splay and the splash, the way he's saying here. Like the splay pattern, that's presumably the last one. The splay pattern represents a third fundamental concept in the classifications. In addition to even distribution, to the symmetrical aggregation, it reveals the idea of persistent emphasis on individuality. The splay chart has a varying number of points of application set up on the rays of special spoke-like emphases of the planetary groupings. These usually seem to lie more or less at random in the signs and houses and to give a definite stance in the horoscope. They're like tripod feet, endowing the native with a splay-foot certainty in every approach he makes to the problems of life. Like the splash and bundle patterns, the splay group offers no preliminary technique for determining the most important planet in the chart, but instead reveals a very intensive personality who cannot be limited to any single steady point of application. He has a temperament, inclined to be particular and impersonal in its interests, in contrast to the universal impersonal set of the splash and to the particular personal set of the bundle type. So obviously, you need to read that in your own time to really get into it. It's a bit like...
But to look at, though, the difference, is it, how obvious is it between the splay and the splash? Because that's what I always get confused about.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Well, mine was called, mine was called a splay. Because, and then now when you described it, I was just told it had to do with being very individual, but I have 3 yodes in it, and there are lots of formations, a grand trine, 2 grand trines, whatever. So but they're all over the chart, and it's true. You can't, there isn't one place you focus on.
So,
but I don't know what I didn't understand splash exactly.
So the splash is really all over the place. Things like splashed all over the place without any. There are some examples here, but it will be very difficult for me to show you. Like he's showing how it looks like, the distribution, like in a wheel. And this one is pretty like random with the splash. So the splash is the first one. The splay is the last one. So the first one, the splash, let me just take a quick look. Okay.
But it's a matter of opinion as well, because I think my chart was described as a bucket in one system and a splash in another one. So
yeah, that's a bit.
It just depends.
Yes. Ultimately, these 2 types are not the very obvious types. You don't have very strict rules about them. But when you have a bucket, for example, the rules are quite strict. Or the seesaw, you can't really have an argument, is it or is it not? But this website, this website is
that's a good one.
Giving us if there is something like that going on, for example, we see it says this chart is a bow shape. So the bow shape with this girl is like, obviously, it's not counting Chiron. If we disregard Chiron, we are in the node, we would think that in this chart, everything is here.
Yeah, within 180 degrees, isn't it? Yeah.
But then I don't agree with this. I mean, I think this is a bucket chart.
Because of Chiron or the nodes?
Yes, I think this is a bow chart becomes a bucket chart when we have a planet here.
Yeah.
something there, to balance on the other side. Sometimes there can be two planets in a conjunction, but usually just one. And I think for this example, this Chiron is the handle of the bucket. Yeah. So the types of formations that it's not very clear to me yet what's the difference between splash and splay. I will investigate that and tell you next time. But he's talking about splash, bundle. Bundle is when everything it's a bit like ball, but it's even more concentrated. With the bundle, you have to have all the planets of the chart within, I think it was 72 degrees, from the first to the last. Really, really stuck together. And I don't remember if you remember this. I don't know if you remember the chart of Sean. Sean is not with us today, but I'm sure he won't mind because we already looked at his chart in the past and we discussed it long. Sean is a good example of a bundle chart. So again, obviously this is Chiron a little bit, but this is very concentrated. Like everything is very close together in that chart. So that's a bundle. And then Mark Jones is talking about a locomotive chart. That's a bit another option. Then the ball, the bucket, the seesaw, and the splay. These are his ones. And then Rudyard has a bit of a different naming, wording, but more or less overlapping. Yeah?
Yeah.
I've got a splash pattern, as I understand it, and I've also got a mystic rectangle and a T-square connected, and it's been really interesting this last week. Jumping into exploring that. I've got a screen I'd like to share. Would that be all right?
Here is your chart. Do you want to share your chart or?
I think at the moment I'll just share the screen if I could.
Let me try to let you do that because I'm not sure about the settings again. Okay. So I will stop sharing. Now, could you try to share?
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, I'm going to try to change that. I'm going to make you host. Now you're host.
Oh.
And I think now you can share.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I discovered that Madame Blavatsky and Henry Ford also have mystic rectangles. So it made me quite interested to explore that further.
You are so prepared. Why did you not say about this earlier?
Yeah, well, I took it as a research mission, what we came out of last week with. And so I jumped right in, and it got more interesting by the day, of course. And
never shy away, never ever shy away from telling me about things you have prepared as examples earlier on, because that's great. I mean,
well, we're all in this together, trying to sort out who we are and what are we called to do, and what's the message in the birth chart. So I know Madame Blavatsky was founded the Theosophical Society, which is still ongoing, and that was more than 100 years ago. Henry Ford, of course, transformed the planet through the invention of the automobile. So I have to scratch my head. So what am I about? I've got one of these mystic rectangles. Does that, where does that come in my life? Well, as you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, this is a graphic that basically is based on the Mayan calendar known as the Tzolkin. That's Tzolkin. This is the most sacred of all I think 19 Mayan calendars. And I've been on a journey since 1986 of attunement to this rectangular calendar. And this is the, imagine each footstep on the diagram there being one lunation cycle. So this has been the journey through the calendar based on one sector per lunation cycle. So I've been exposing myself to the symbology that comes to us from the Mayan civilization. And it's all converging through the lunation cycle. And I can see that, you know, this is, whatever it is that's coming, the consciousness that's coming through this form is what I'm kind of about. You know, I've been pioneering this research, and as I say, I hadn't really connected it up with other, you know, historical exemplars, but it's really an interesting way to flesh out your understanding of your own chart. There are others, mystic rectangle charts that I came across, but both Ford, Blavatsky, and myself, it's all about air and fire, you know, the four corners of the rectangle. So, you know, that's information for me, you know, as to how I'm to be in the world, and I certainly can relate.
So just for those of others that may not be aware of that, what's a mystic rectangle to start with? It's we have two oppositions crossing, but then the way they cross, we have 6,000 trines formed between the sides. Is that right? So we've got, we don't only have two oppositions, we also have at the same time between these four players. And it's so interesting in your chart, Dwayne, how it's the sun and the moon, well, the sun with the rest of the planets here, but the sun and the moon, the luminaries, and then you've got Neptune and Pluto, the last two planets, the last, like, this to me is very interesting, how they kind of interact, the personal with the transpersonal. It mixes up in such a way. And you are integrating the most personal things, the most individual things with the most global energies to this mystic rectangle. And you've got, like, for example, we've got these trines between Moon and Pluto, between Neptune and Sun. Is it right? I mean, I'm not seeing it very well, but I hope it's I'm not making a mistake. And then the sextiles between Pluto and Neptune, between Sun and Moon. So that's such a, when we have a formation like this, we're dealing with a situation when many different aspects overlap, and they involve the same planets, the same forces in several different kinds of energy interaction. And that makes it more complicated, more interesting, more, deep. And obviously when somebody has something like that going on in their chart, they have more of a kind of a task there to integrate those energies in many different ways, to work with them. They're more compelled to work with them, and to eventually something coming out of that. It's more of a, I see it more of as a potentially more eventful life, or more rich experiences kind of life, because this cannot go away. This will produce some sort of action, some sort of tension, and the person will need to deal with it. And in the process, you become maybe more evolved, or more knowledgeable, or more experienced. I don't know. It's just the way I try to think of it. So, and also all these four players, for example, you have the chance to see the energy from so many different directions, from a direction of a sextile, from a direction of a trine, from a direction of an opposition, and to really maybe become an expert in the integration of those energies. Or you can become the victim if this is too much, if this is too intensive, and you don't know what to do with it. So I don't know. Do you relate to any of what I'm
absolutely
about here?
No, right on, right on. And just to, in my case there, to make it a little bit more complex, we've got a T-square, Moon, Neptune, then connecting by square to Jupiter.
Yeah.
Which then, as I understand it, the T-square is released in the point opposite opposite Jupiter in this case.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to, in this last week, really get this integration of the rectangle and the T-square. I've never been into that exploration before. So it's been quite a challenge to kind of wrap my head around it, but very worthwhile.
And this is very close to your ascendant, isn't it, Wayne? That this
exactly.
Point...
In fact, that brings in a whole other factor. Born in Calgary, and that puts the opposite point to my Jupiter in the 12th house, close to the ascendant. But moving here to Spence's Bridge, west of Calgary by 10-hour drive, puts that release point exactly on my ascendant to the degree. So there's a whole contemplation for me around that.
So you by moving to that other place, maybe you speeded up your own evolution of dealing with the whole, not just this aspect, but the whole configuration, which wouldn't have been possible to be triggered at the old location.
Yeah.
Which brings another interesting topic, maybe for the future, of relocation charts and how they affect us, how we are affected when we move to a new place. I'm sure most of us here have at least once moved to, if not another country, or another part of the country or something like this. And it's so usual nowadays, isn't it, for people to have experienced living in different locations.
Dwayne?
Yes.
I wanted to ask why the Mayan chart is up there, and how the Tzolk'in, how did that relate to the mystic rectangle? I mean, how are you relating it to the mystic rectangle?
Well, I'm seeing it as a manifestation of rectangularity that's been foremost in my life. As that image came into my life in 1985 through Jose Arguelles, who's an associate of Rudyard's at the time, and
I know that system. I know I'm a red resonant dragon. I know my place. I'm at the corner and all that. I know a lot about it, but I've never related it to astrology.
How exactly do you do it, the relationship? That we're curious about it because it's new for us. I mean, for me, it's completely new. So how do you connect practically these two systems?
That's my question, because I really studied. Every day I knew what day of the color it was, and I wore those colors, and we had parties that people showed up as their Mayan symbol and everything. I was really into it.
Well, what you're into there is actually the dream spell, which is Arguelles' version, Arguelles' kind of new age version of the Tzolk'in. Prior to his invention of the dream spell, and in his book Earth Descending, he revealed the essential core structure of the Tzolk'in. I mean, he applied that structure in his own way to create the dream spell. I have applied that structure in my own way to create what I call the lightning path. And where it began was in 1985. So I'm many years into my lunation journaling practice, where I'm conscious of every new moon, every first quarter, every full moon. I'm wedded to the lunation cycle for all these years. And then in March of 1986, I had an aha moment. Like it was a full-bodied initiation into a realm of understanding where I saw the path ahead. And it was based on seeing every lunation cycle as having a reference to the Tzolk'in. So in the diagram below, you see me entering there at the upper left-hand corner. So that was the first moon of 260 moons, or 21 years, which is 1/4 of the orbit of Uranus. So what this is an access point to Uranian energy, let's say. And and this is an interesting connection, is through the new moon before your birth. The new moon before birth keys to one of those 260 sectors. And that new moon is contained within a series of 13 moons, the seventh moon of which determines what we call the temple of birth. So I am born in the 11th moon of the temple of thunder, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the more work that I've done with going back and looking into historical exemplars and what was their temple of birth, the more interesting it's become. I've had many, many corroborations that keep me moving with this research and with this momentum. It has a lot to tell us. And I was interested in exploring this during this week. I came up with this quote here, which was off the wiki site associated with astro.com. Dane Rudhyar calls this figure a symbol for practical mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that really what I'm pioneering is that it's a practical way of engaging with this very mystical sacred calendar, and it's a practical way. There's like one moon cycle equals one sector of the grid, and so you've got a number and a hieroglyph to contemplate for that whole month, and there's an integrity to the journey. The whole, as I understand it, the whole of what that calendar grid is meant to do is to help cultivate unconditional love. The Temple of Flowers is the culminating developmental stage, let's say. I mean, this is all a spiralic journey. It comes back again and again and again. But I know for a fact that you, Radlina, are born in the Temple of Flowers.
Really?
Yes. It's all about teamwork. It's about unconditional love. I mean, it's all the things that you radiate, in your being. So that to me is another confirmation of the validity of this.
Oh, this is so interesting. I've never heard of it before, and I want to study more. I want to learn more about this.
And how do you determine, like if I was interested in which temple I was born in, how do you determine the temple you are born in?
Yeah, that's what I would like to know too. Maybe more complicated to explain in a few minutes, but I guess give us some pointers.
If I could tell you I'm a red resonant dragon, and I'm at that top right corner of the rectangle. I hold one of the. I think that's one of the. That top right corner.
Okay, well, now you have to take note that the dream spell is not the lightning path.
Okay.
Okay. Is not the traditional Mayan count as well.
Okay.
As I understand it, this is a novel application of the Tzolk'in that I've basically discovered. And it's one that, as I say, links us directly to Uranus. It's almost like an acceleration path.
I love
the
this.
lightning path, you know. And my lightning path website has linkage to what I call the Book of Electrum. The Book of Electrum is mapping this grid back in time so that you can determine your temple of birth, and also ahead. You know, there's an anticipatory element to this as well.
What is your website so I can look at it during this week?
Yeah, lightningpath.net.
And not but lightningpath.net.
Right.
Boy, this is interesting.
Very.
I'm very, very triggered by it. Like, now I have to know.
Me too. Me too.
Well, it puts the lunation cycle to work in a way that I don't think none of my research has revealed any other historical usage in this way. So it's definitely we're breaking trail here.
Fabulous.
This is very, very.
A moon in Aries, sun in Aquarius.
Yeah, you're doing some very original work, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's worth spreading. Dwayne, why don't you, if you want, why don't you post about this more? Why don't you post on the group, the Psychological Astrology group, just to maybe start a conversation, share things, and then others can ask you questions, whatever. Or if you have another group or another page that you prefer to use, share that and we'll come to that. Yeah?
Yeah, I would join a group like that.
Yes.
Just because I've already done so much in this, you know, there's a whole thing. I was part of a Native American group called the 13 Moons. So, I mean, I have a lot of resonance already in an experience. I have a 13-sided drum. I am interested in these same sorts of things. What a surprise, huh?
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's great. That's great. Okay, I think we've got so much to explore for next week.
Yeah.
So interesting. And next week, I will give you, Dwayne, first the word to speak about the Sabian symbols in general.
Sabian symbols, sure.
If you want, just briefly. And and maybe you know stories, I don't know. And then we can do the exercise about sharing a symbol, if you want.
Sure.
Great.
That'd be great.
In the meantime, I'm going to try to see if there are any repeating degrees between our charts or something like that going on.
That's fun.
So we can look at that as well.
How we came together. And I'm so busy, and yet this seems so, I can't wait for Thursday mornings.
Me too. Me too. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
See you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye.